Chapter 107, Spring and Autumn Tree. 3 methods exist, the old man said, collecting the bag. Third, alleviate poison pain with one of 3 spirit fruits. Second, suppress the poison and reduce flare-ups with a spring and autumn tree. 1 tree suppresses for 1 year, rare but acquirable. The cost, deepened poisoning and severe rebound. When suppression fails, eruption will be unstoppable. As for completely eliminating the poison, and this is the first method, it's actually quite simple. Find someone of the senior generation who is in the spirit severing stage. They can easily eliminate the poison for you using the power of the spirit severing stage. Very well, seeing how readily you spend such quantities of spirit stones, I might as well tell you of a 4th method. If you somehow have the good fortune to acquire a poison-dispelling pill personally concocted by Grandmaster Pill Demon, then you could use it to completely eliminate the poison. However, said the old man calmly, Grandmaster Pill Demon holds a lofty position in the Violet Fate sect. It would be very difficult. Meng Hao pulled out another bag. Spirit stones mattered far less than his life. The old man's eyes glittered as he took it. I know your question. Where do I buy it? Meng Hao asked coldly. There's no way for outsiders to know about this yet, but considering my status, I'm special, so I happen to have heard the news. In a month, a trading caravan from the Western Desert will arrive here. When they do, the 100 Treasures Pavilion will host an auction. One of the items they will be selling is Spring and Autumn Tree. 100 Treasures Pavilion. Meng Hao's eyes flashed, recalling the one in Eastern Refinement City in the state of Zhao. 2. If you want to refresh your mind about the 100 Treasures Pavilion, as well as Meng Hao's flirtatious encounter there, you can reread Chapter 53. Meng Hao stood and walked to the door. A refined, beautiful woman appeared. Their eyes met briefly. Middle Foundation Establishment, he thought, his face blank as he passed. She entered as he left, her brow furrowing as she watched them go. He seems familiar, Chu Yuyan thought, then dismissed it. 6 years had passed since she'd seen a 6th-level Qi condensation boy on East Mountain take Wang Tengfei's chance at the inner sect. She'd forgotten him long ago. If you want to re-experience the introduction of Chu Yuyan and Wang Zifen, you can reread Chapter 35. She'd forgotten him. He hadn't forgotten her, nor the Tao Protector at her side, nor her closeness to Wang Tengfei. That was her. Meng Hao walked faster, cold but thinking fast. She hadn't recognized him. He'd changed too much, his cultivation base, everything. No one would connect this Meng Hao to that nobody. I was insignificant then. She was close with Wang Tengfei, surely a great sect's disciple. I make no impression, but she's Middle Foundation Establishment now. What is Wang Tengfei's base? A barely perceptible cold smile crossed his face. Qiu Lin walked beside him, looking thoughtful. Suddenly he stopped. That was Chu Yuyan, he exclaimed. Chu Yuyan, Meng Hao's expression flickered. The woman. She's a Violet Fate sect chosen, one of the 4 great beauties of the southern domain, Qiu Lin exclaimed. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. When she was born, a celestial lotus bloomed, Qiu Lin gushed. Incredible talent, extraordinary beauty. Grandmaster Pill Demon took her as his personal apprentice. Her beloved is Wang Tengfei, a Wang clan chosen. When they got engaged, the whole southern domain talked about it. Qiu Lin didn't notice the look in Meng Hao's eyes. Qiu Lin chattered about Chu Yuyan as they walked to an inn in a far corner. Meng Hao asked about the auction, paid him, and dismissed him. Late night came. In his inn room, Meng Hao sat cross-legged, eyes twinkling. Qiu Lin's words about Chu Yuyan filled his mind. After a time, he frowned. I wonder if there is some way to use Chu Yuyan to get Grandmaster Pill Demon to make me a poison-dispelling pill. When he thought about Grandmaster Pill Demon, he couldn't help but think about Ding Xin's Foundation Establishment pill. Ding Xin was also an apprentice of Grandmaster Pill Demon. Meng Hao laughed bitterly. He had killed the man's apprentice and also offended the Violet Fate sect. Dispelling the poison in that way would be very difficult. He began to meditate. At Foundation Establishment, he needed vastly more spiritual energy than at Qi condensation. To reach Middle Foundation Establishment, he'd need 4 Tao pillars. I have 1 Tao pillar with a crack, a flawless foundation. I reached Foundation Establishment at 13th level Qi condensation. My cultivation is the Sublime Spirit Scripture, giving my Tao pillar gold color. Deeper enlightenment, greater spiritual sense. Few early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators match me. I've never fought someone of the middle stage of Foundation Establishment, so I'm not sure, but I think I could hold my own. His eyes shone as he thought of his match with the burly man surnamed Shan. At that time, He had come to have a much better understanding of the power of his flawless foundation. When the time came to form his second Tao pillar, he would be prepared. "I need some medicinal pills suitable for the early foundation establishment stage," he said, taking a deep breath. He closed his eyes and spit out the lightning flag. A field of lightning mist sprang up, within which arcs of electricity sparkled. If anyone tried to make a move against him, they would immediately shoot out to protect him. Within the mist, Meng Hao once again attempted to use the 8th demon sealing hex, and once again failed. However, with each of his failed attempts, he seemed to grow closer to enlightenment. The night passed uneventfully. As dawn broke the next morning, Meng Hao opened his eyes. He left the inn to explore this city of cultivators in the state of eastern emergence. He wanted to find some medicinal pills suitable for foundation establishment, and hopefully learn something about the spring and autumn tree. Half a month passed exploring the city's shops. Incredible variety, but prices were very high. Finally, he purchased a common foundation establishment medicinal pill. Called the Mast Establishment Pill, it was suitable for early foundation establishment. Many foundation establishment pills exist, but with ordinary efficacy. High-quality pills are exclusive to sects. Outsiders rarely get them except at auction. Another half-month passed. Meng Hao had grown much more familiar with the city. At the moment, he sat in the restaurant of his inn, next to a window, looking down at the throngs of people below. In his hand was a cup of alcohol, which he sipped as he thought. "I've consumed far too many medicinal pills over the years. I've pushed my cultivation base with a quantity of pills far exceeding the average person." He frowned. It's not that the city didn't have pills suitable for the foundation establishment stage, or that the prices were too high. It was a problem of the 5 medallions. 5 medallion types controlled who could buy certain products. Without one, money meant nothing. The Violet Fate sect controlled distribution this way. 5 medallions, only earned through meritorious service. Annoying. Meng Hao drank, frowning deeper. "Thankfully, I don't need a medallion to participate in the auction. As long as I have enough spirit stones to pay the entrance fee, I can get in." Meng Hao's gaze swept the street below. As he muttered to himself, time passed. Soon, the inn's restaurant began to fill with cultivators, who chatted and exchanged information. Qiu Lin had selected a relatively well-known inn for Meng Hao. They served only one drink, Savor the Spirit. Unique flavor, no burn, very strong, infused with spiritual energy, enough to make it expensive. "I heard that the trade caravan from the Western Desert arrived today. They brought way more people with them than they did in past years. I bet there's going to be a lot of treasures up for grabs at the 100 Treasures Pavilion auction. There aren't as many resources in the Western Desert as there are in the Southern Domain, but they have a lot of very unique material that we really need here. When they show up every few years, they usually bring representatives from around 100 different merchant groups and a variety of sects from different nations. The techniques of their cultivators are very strange. I hope we have a chance to learn something from them." "I don't think so. They've obviously brought more people than usual. There has to be a reason for that. I'd say there's an 80 to 90% chance it has something to do with the corpse of that immortal." The sound of voices filled the restaurant, and most of them were discussing the auction which was to take place in half a month, and how it related to the arrival of the Western Desert Trade Caravan. Meng Hao prepared to leave. The caravan didn't interest him, but mention of an immortal's corpse made his eyes flash. He sat back, poured another cup, and listened. "The immortal's corpse. Heh, it's been a bloodbath over there recently. 3 years ago, the 5 great sects and the 3 great clans tried to force their way into the area, but were met with failure after failure. They had no choice but to back off. 3. If you want a reminder of what happened when the corpse fell from the sky, you can reread chapter 61. The immortal's corpse must have fallen out from the heavens that year because it wanted to enter the rebirth cave, one of the southern domain's 3 danger zones. And yet, for some reason, it landed about 3,000 meters away from it. Actually, it didn't just provoke a reaction from the 5 great sects and 3 great clans. The strange things that exist within the rebirth cave also have been emerging occasionally. Everyone wants a piece of the immortal's body. Even just a bit of it would increase anyone's hope of achieving immortal ascension." As Meng Hao listened to the buzz of conversation in the restaurant, a strange look appeared in his eyes. He thought back to the time in the state of Zhao when the land had continued to shake over and over again. He had gotten the feeling that something from the heavens had fallen down to smash into the earth. "You know what I heard? When the immortal's corpse fell down, some people saw it with their own eyes. They said its pupils were gray and that inside 7 stars glittered." When Meng Hao heard this, he was just lifting his cup up to take another drink. Suddenly, a tremor ran through his body and his hand began to tremble, spilling alcohol out all over. 4. If you are confused regarding Meng Hao's reaction to hearing about the gray pupils and 7 stars, you might want to reread Chapter 59. Chapter 108, The Secret Struggle begins. The busy restaurant masked Meng Hao's reaction. He set down his cup, his expression calm, but his heart pounded and his mind roared. He turned to look at the man who'd mentioned the 7 stars, then lowered his head and drank. It's weird. That immortal is dead, yet its body exudes powerful pressure causing strange phenomena. The great sects and clans could only approach 300 meters. I heard that recently the great clans and sects made some special preparations and were able to approach closer than 300 meters. The discussions continued until midday, whereupon people began to disperse. The person who had mentioned the 7 stars stood up. Chatting and laughing with his companion, he made to leave. Meng Hao tapped the table lightly. The boom sent tremors through nearby cultivators, who turned to look. His foundation establishment pressure suddenly filled the restaurant, then dissipated. But 8th and 9th level cultivators trembled, their faces paled, hearts racing as they wondered if they'd offended him. They saluted, filled with veneration. They knew fighting was prohibited, so he wouldn't attack lightly. But his foundation establishment pressure was mighty and dreadful. You, Meng Hao said, pointing. The young man, about 27, 8th level chi condensation, trembled. Blood drained from his face. Fear filled his eyes. He'd never seen Meng Hao and didn't know why he'd been chosen. Other cultivators slipped away, sighing with relief. Meng Hao drank, expressionless. The young man didn't dare refuse. He approached cautiously. Meng Hao lifted his head and looked at him. You just said that the corpse of that immortal had gray eyes, within which were 7 stars. Is what you said true? Senior, allow me to explain, said the young man quickly, not daring to leave anything out. I didn't see the matter with my own eyes, I only heard about it. However, I have a good friend who really did observe the whole thing personally. And where exactly is this good friend of yours? Said Meng Hao, his voice low. I haven't seen him for half a year, he replied quickly, worried Meng Hao would think he was making things up if he took too long to respond. He's a water bamboo sect disciple named Su Yan. Meng Hao frowned and nodded, waving his hand dismissively. The young man bowed respectfully and then left as fast as possible, heaving a sigh of relief. He decided that he would never again return to this place again. Meng Hao sat thinking. The few remaining chi condensation cultivators paid and left one by one. Soon the restaurant was empty. Gray pupils with 7 stars. Could the immortal's corpse and the animated corpse I saw above the Tower of Tang be the same? Meng Hao contemplated both the corpse and the dread he'd felt. Complex matters were unfolding. If I want to confirm it, I'll have to see the corpse with my own eyes. After a while, he returned to his room. The matter of the immortal's corpse was now a heavy weight on his heart. He had the sinking sensation that the reason the corpse had fallen to the earth was he himself. Meng Hao spent the next half-month gathering information about the immortal's corpse, slowly understanding the momentous events of the past years surrounding it. The year the corpse fell, it immediately aroused the attention of the 5 great sects and 3 great clans of the southern domain. One after another, they attempted to reach the corpse, but could never get closer than 3,000 meters. Plus, they encountered problems with the strangeness from within the rebirth cave. They made further attempts, even using various sect treasures, and were eventually able to get as close as 300 meters. The most momentous thing that happened was half a year ago. The solitary sword sect used their Tao reserve to break past the 300-meter mark. They were able to get 2 drops of blood from the corpse. One of the drops was purchased by the Violet Fate sect for an exorbitant price. The other was taken back to the solitary sword sect to be used to gain enlightenment regarding the meaning of immortality. Meng Hao recorded all he'd learned on a jade slip. Spirit stones had bought the information. There were even some cultivators from the Great Tang in the eastern lands who came to investigate. People from the western desert have also arrived. The corpse came to be called an immortal's corpse and has sent shockwaves throughout the entire cultivation world. Meng Hao was quiet for a moment. He put the jade slip away and then left the inn, his eyes glittering. Everyone in the city talked about the auction. Meng Hao had paid his deposit and got his medallion. He walked the streets. After passing through alleys, his robe turned black. He put on a bamboo hat and mask. Many did the same now. The auction neared and people wanted privacy. He reached the auction square, large, circular, filled with restrictive spells glowing with symbols. Cultivators patrolled. 10 were foundation establishment. 4 floated above the stage, glowing. Core formation pressure emanated from them. This was just the guard force that was visible. To organize an auction of this scale would require the support of nascent soul cultivators. A nascent soul cultivator could strike fear into the heart of an entire city. But even in the 5 great sects and 3 great clans of the southern domain, nascent soul cultivators were rare. Any nascent soul cultivator was a patriarch, usually in secluded meditation. Core formation cultivators typically handled external matters. Most of the people attending the auction were from the state of Eastern emergence. Also present were cultivators from surrounding nations who had traveled here for the sole purpose of participating in the auction. Everyone who entered the auction square had an auction plaque. By the time Meng Hao arrived, there were already several hundred people present. More continued to stream in. Meng Hao had paid for a seat at the far edge. He sat cross-legged, looking coldly at the stage. Above were 3 levels of private booths for high-ranking cultivators, not necessarily the most powerful. Looking around at the cultivators around him, he saw a group who were clearly much taller than everyone else. They wore less clothing, and in fact, many parts of their bodies were encircled with iron hoops. Their skin was dark, and most of them had blue eyes. Each and every one of them were big and tall, their hair wild. From their strange clothing and iron hoops, it was obvious that they weren't from the southern domain. These were cultivators from the western desert. Time passed 2 hours. Soon, when the auction square was filled with nearly 1,000 people, the sound of a bell rang out. The bustle and noise died down and everything grew quiet. A blinding, multicolored glow appeared on the auction stage, expanding to cover the entire square. An old man appeared, wearing a long robe, his hair white, his look ancient. His gleaming eyes caused a commotion. "It's Sir Kaio from the 100 Treasures Pavilion." "So, Sir Kaio is going to personally preside over the auction. He's in the middle of the core formation stage. He's not from the southern domain. He came here several years ago from the coastal islands in the Milky Way Sea." Discussions rippled out. The old man coughed lightly and spoke, his voice filling the square. 100 items today: pills, magical items, legacies, materials, western desert goods, southern domain treasures, Milky Way valuables. I need not state the rules. Lot 1. A 1,000-year-old Milky Way sea conch shell. A lithe, beautiful woman appeared, carrying a jade tray with a black conch shell about the size of a hand. The conch shell was covered with numerous lines, which ran and interlocked randomly across its surface. It glimmered as if it contained secrets of the heavens and the Tao. A mysterious, celestial sound filled the auction square. "This treasure is 1,000 years old and emits a celestial sound," said Sir Kaio. The auction square went quiet. "The veins that run through the shell are magical in nature. By imbuing them with spiritual sense for 3 days, you can add half of a 60-year cycle to your longevity. There is no reserve price for this item." As soon as he finished talking, the auction square erupted with conversations. Longevity treasures caused sensation and fighting. Even the private booths were shocked. This auction would be grand. Meng Hao's attention focused on the young woman. Shock crossed his face as he recognized her, the woman from the 100 Treasures Pavilion in Eastern Refinement City. Kaio Ling. How could she be here, he thought. The state of Zhao disappeared a long time ago. Maybe she left before all the momentous events. After all, there's a 100 Treasures Pavilion in this city too. Chu Yuyan stood in a first-level private booth, looking down at the square. A middle-aged man stood respectfully beside her. "Fellow Taoist Chu, the spring and autumn tree that you need is here. Unfortunately, the rules of our pavilion cannot be broken. If you need it, you must acquire it through auction. It is lot 39 on the auction list." Chapter 109, The Legend of Doom. A 1,000-year-old conch shell from the Milky Way Sea, capable of increasing the longevity of a cultivator. Longevity is priceless. Long life is important to anyone. It is a thirst which springs from the soul itself. Especially for aging cultivators. To add half a 60-year cycle, they'd pay any price. As the first item, it caused a buzz. Bids rang out from the private booths in the crowd below. Prices climbed until Meng Hao felt apprehensive. In the end, someone in the second level of private booths purchased it. Even though no one in the crowd below had been able to purchase it, their spirits were lifted by the purchase. When the second, third, and fourth items appeared, the atmosphere grew even more exciting, and the prices called out even higher. This was the first time Meng Hao had attended an auction like this, and also his first time seeing the unbridled excitement of cultivators. His mind slowly grew clear, and he looked coldly around as the cultivators called out price after higher price for the items they wished to purchase. Lot 8 is an item that many fellow Taoists have traveled here specifically to purchase, said Sir Kaio coolly. He flourished his right hand, and behind him, Kaio Ling appeared with yet another item on a jade tray. A black bone fragment with jagged edges, seemingly skull. Complicated symbols carved it, an ancient, ghastly aura sealed by the jade tray's shield. The aura drifted out, filling the square with the stench of ages-old rotten flesh. Everyone felt an ancient, wild, indescribable grief. One of the 3 danger zones in the southern domain is the ancient Temple of Doom. The Doom clan arose in ancient times, and did not meet with the approval of the heavens. The heavenly Tao cursed them, and thus they died. But their spirits were not willing to pass away, so they defied the heavens to create their temple. It's hard to say how many years have passed since that time. The temple has become a danger zone, filled with incredible peril. Even nascent soul cultivators will have a hard time making it out alive. However, inside the temple is an ancient legacy, ancient spirit medicines, and ancient treasures. A few years ago, one of the solitary sword clan's elders made it out alive, raving about the long life pill he'd seen. I'm pleased to auction this directly from the ancient Temple of Doom. It wards against evil. Silence fell, then bidding erupted. 300,000 spirit stones. 500,000 spirit stones. That item can ward against evil. If I go into the ancient Temple of Doom, I'm dead for sure, but I'm reaching the end of my longevity. With that item, maybe I can enter the temple. 600,000 spirit stones. I'm determined to get this item. Meng Hao's eyes flickered as prices climbed. He'd read of the 3 danger zones but knew little. Now he knew more of the ancient Temple of Doom. The 3 danger zones: Rebirth Cave, Ancient Temple of Doom, Primordial Tao Lakes. He watched as bids climbed, then closed his eyes. He wasn't interested. Time passed by as item after item was auctioned off. Finally, Sir Kaio's voice rang out. Lot 38 is a bottle of refined establishment pills, 6 in total. Personally concocted by Grandmaster Pill Demon, these pills are suitable for cultivators of the Foundation establishment stage. The reserve price is 30,000. The bidding shall be in increments of at least 10,000. Meng Hao's eyes snapped open. Previous items included pills, but prices were too high or inappropriate for his level. These pills were the least expensive yet. 40,000 spirit stones. Qi condensation cultivators made up the largest percent of participants, and after that was the Foundation establishment stage. The number of people who made bids previous hadn't been very large, but for this item, many people began to call out prices. 50,000 spirit stones. I'll bid 80,000 spirit stones. I need those refined establishment pills. Please, fellow Taoists, for the sake of the Cloud Peak sect, allow me to take them. 100,000, said Meng Hao, his eyes flashing. He also needed these medicinal pills. The instant he opened his mouth, the cultivator who had just spoken turned around. His eyes flicked back and forth. There were too many people present, so it was impossible for him to determine who had spoken. 110,000, he said coldly. 150,000. Meng Hao didn't care a bit about the other cultivator trying to figure out who he was. As soon as he spoke, the man's gaze fell upon him. This cultivator from the Cloud Peak sect was also at the early Foundation establishment stage. He stared murderously at Meng Hao, clenching his teeth. 200,000, he said. No one else was willing to bid further. The pill was extraordinary, but 200,000 spirit stones was more than most of them could afford. Meng Hao frowned. He needed one pill, but the spring and autumn tree was more important. The price would climb too high. He gave up. Lot 39 is a spring and autumn tree. This type of wood is not very common. It can suppress 10,000 types of poison and can be refined into the primary ingredient required to make a variety of magical items. This is the first time I've personally auctioned off this item. As such, I would like to share some classified information with all of you fellow Taoists. Spring and autumn tree forms when normal wood is struck by spring and autumn lightning. Not made by people, appears only through heaven's luck. Many of you know this. The tree has no root, it won't grow in earth. But legend says it has a parent tree in the underworld, the world tree. Uproar erupted. The word world tree shocked even the private booths. Sir Kaio, rang out a voice from one of the private books, is this world tree you mentioned the one from the legends, which leads to beyond the heavens? Correct, said Sir Kaio, his expression calm. Its shape is like that of an ox, its bark is easily peeled off, and when this happens, the ribbon-like strand looks like a yellow snake. Its leaves are like a net. Its fruit is like that of a golden rain tree, and its trunk is like an elm tree. Its name is the world tree. According to the ancient legends, an almighty expert once replaced the heavens. He even covered over the starry sky with his own expanse. His expanse covered the world, with the starry sky being beyond that. However, the world tree did not agree to live under that heaven. Instead, it destroyed itself in the starry sky. However, its will remained within the earth. During the seasons of spring and autumn, heavenly lightning will fall to destroy it. To protect itself, it creates the spring and autumn tree. Dark green leaves, purple trunk. Black flowers, yellow fruit. No sound beneath its canopy, no shadows cast. These are rumors, I'm not certain they're true. The opening bid begins at 100,000 spirit stones. Many who weren't interested suddenly were. Meng Hao frowned. Before he could control the price. Now many wanted it, the cost would climb. He looked at Sir Kaio on the stage. His face was expressionless, but Meng Hao sensed shrewdness and ruthlessness. Also frowning was Chu Yuyan, up in the top level of private booths. Her delicate brow furrowed, and she sighed inwardly. She realized she had been a bit rash. The 100 Treasures Pavilion had intentionally done this after she made her inquiries. Presumably, they also knew why she needed this particular tree. Multiple bids rang out. 150,000. 200,000. 230,000. Meng Hao watched, biding his time. 260,000. That's as far as I can go. It might be able to suppress poisons, but it's a consumable item. I don't need it because of some so-called world tree. I need it to dispel poison. The polite words were spoken by a soft-spoken cultivator wearing a long black robe. He saluted the surrounding cultivators with clasped hands. Chu Yuyan spoke. 300,000. Her clear voice rang out. Many looked up, unsure who'd spoken. 320,000, said the other cultivator, his heart thumping. He clenched his teeth and looked up at the ring of private booths. All the people up there were famous figures from throughout the state of Eastern Emergence and were not to be offended easily. But he couldn't give up. 350,000, Chu Yuyan said coolly. Some could now place the voice at the top booths. Most still couldn't locate it. The black-robed cultivator's face twitched. He laughed bitterly. 320,000 was his limit, including borrowed stones. But the real reason to give up was the opponent's identity. Whoever bid from the top booths was someone not to provoke. He sat down bitterly, not making another bid. Everyone knew that, whoever this mysterious woman was, she needed the spring and autumn tree. Nobody was willing to offend someone from within the ring of private booths. Chu Yuyan sighed. 350,000 was far more than its value, but worth it to her. However, at this exact moment, a voice suddenly broke the silence down below. 360,000. When the voice rang out, everyone in the auction square gaped in shock, looking around to try to see who had just spoken. Because the cultivators in his immediate vicinity were looking at him in amazement, it didn't take long before everyone in the square was looking at him. He sat, head lowered, face covered, eyes calm. 400,000, Chu Yuyan said, frowning. She hadn't expected another bid but had no choice but to raise. 410,000, said Meng Hao coolly. His voice was deeper than normal, but he still spoke calmly. Chapter 110, Chu Yuyan's Killing Intent. He'll outbid the second level. Who is this guy? A hat hides his face. He's bold, driving the price so high. Who's in that top booth? Discussions erupted. Sir Kaio alone remained composed, glancing at Meng Hao then upward. Behind him, a look of interest appeared on Kaio Ling's face. She looked at Meng Hao closely, but because of his wide hat and the cloth covering his face, she didn't recognize him. 500,000, Chu Yuyan said, her brow furrowed. An incredible bid. She stepped forward, lifting the curtain. Suddenly, the square centered on her. All recognized her. That's Chu Yuyan, from the Violet Fate sect. It's her, the square erupted. In the state of Eastern Emergence, she was highly respected. A Violet Fate sect chosen, Grandmaster Pill Demon's personal apprentice, the sect leader's daughter. Her unsurpassed beauty drew all eyes. No more suspense. Now that Chu Yuyan's shown herself, no one will outbid her for a spring and autumn tree. She sat on it, revealed her identity. Are those rumors true? I think they were. Otherwise, she wouldn't need a spring and autumn tree. Conversations buzzed. Chu Yuyan assumed bidding was over. Then Meng Hao's cold voice rang out. 600,000. He jumped by 100,000. Uproar erupted. Sir Kaio stared at him. Chu Yuyan frowned at Meng Hao. Only his hat showed. 650,000. 700,000. Meng Hao said calmly, determined to win. Fellow Taoist, you know who I am, Chu Yuyan said lightly, staring at him. This item isn't worth so many stones. I need it to suppress poison for someone you surely know. Back down, I'll be in your debt. Further discussions erupted. The rumors are true. She's buying it for Wang Tengfei of the Wang clan. Golden Frost sect sources say Wang Tengfei, a Wang clan chosen, was from some backwater sect. He searched for an amazing legacy, but during a fight over an inner sect spot, a local cultivator smashed his finger. Likely true. Li Fugui from the Golden Frost sect feuds with Wang Tengfei and talks about it. Wang Tengfei formed a new finger, but it's poisonous. Everyone knows. Chu Yuyan obviously wants the tree to suppress the poison. Meng Hao's eyes flickered slightly. Now he knew why Chu Yuyan was so anxious. From the chatter, Fatty Li Fugui was doing well in the Golden Frost sect. Fellow Taoist Chu, I also very much need this item, said Meng Hao coolly. Chu Yuyan's eyes flashed coldly. She gritted her teeth and stared at Meng Hao. 750,000, she said. 900,000. Meng Hao still had quite a bit of spirit stones in his bag of holding. He had made up his mind to win the spring and autumn tree, so immediately called out an exorbitant price. The surrounding cultivators gasped greedily, but anyone snatching from Chu Yuyan surely had powerful backing. Chu Yuyan gnashed her teeth. A violet fate sect chosen, the stones weren't hers, they were the sect's. 900,000 was hard to justify for Wang Tengfei, even for her. She felt powerless. She stared down at Meng Hao, her eyes bright with murder. A long moment passed. She didn't bid again. The tree went to Meng Hao. Someone accepted his payment. He took it and left immediately. He didn't care about other items. Cultivators could leave any time. He hurried through alleys. He removed his hat and mask, then changed his robe. He looked completely different. He ran straight for the city gate. 300 meters out, he shot skyward into a beam of light. After moments of flight, a whistling scream sounded. A spotless white crane pursued, faster than him. Meng Hao frowned and looked back. Chu Yuyan stood atop the crane, her face expressionless, her eyes ice-cold. The crane cried out, becoming light as it approached. A white glow from its mouth transformed into a net that shot toward Meng Hao. Chu Yuyan held a jade slip with black spots emanating archaic aura. She summoned a phantasmic white-haired old man. The phantom waved his finger toward Meng Hao, a tracking jade. Hand over the spring and autumn tree and I won't cause you any trouble. Otherwise, I will use this searching jade to track you down. The ancient jade is locked onto you. Even if you flee to the ends of the earth, I'll be able to find you. Chu Yuyan produced a violet lotus pod the size of a fist. She tossed it. It shook and burst into a dozen seeds. As they flew, they transformed into armor-clad phantom women with spears charging at Meng Hao. As they approached, pressure from Chu Yuyan's foundation establishment cultivation base bore down on Meng Hao. In addition, the armor-clad women who sped toward Meng Hao seemed to be emitting the power of the early foundation establishment stage. Above, the clouds spiraled violently. Meng Hao's eyes flashed. Years of battle magic experience guided him. Before the net descended, he opened his mouth. The lightning flag emerged amidst lightning, transforming into mist. It shot not at the net but at the phantoms wrapping them. Explosions erupted. The phantoms shattered. Chu Yuyan frowned and raised her hands in an incantation. Before she could cast, Meng Hao's hand flashed. The mist hid his action. He produced a copper mirror and shined it at her crane. The crane's eyes widened. Its wing exploded in blood. Its rear end quivered and burst. Blood rained down. The crane shrieked and tumbled, unable to fly, racked with pain. Chu Yuyan gaped, terrified. The crane fell, the net broke. Meng Hao shot backward, his breath deep, the mist returning to his bag. He drew a great black bow. He pulled back and shot 9 arrows toward Chu Yuyan. Backed by his cultivation base, they screamed through the air. Booms filled the air. Meng Hao frowned, shooting backward at top speed. A violet shield circled Chu Yuyan. The arrows disintegrated against it, but the shield broke. Her clothing tore, revealing skin. A sharp glow emitted from her eyes as she stared at the bow in Meng. That bow was Ding Xin's. Why have it? After Ding Xin went to the state of Zhao, his life slip shattered. The state of Zhao. An astute gleam filled her eyes. Her eyes widened. The pieces fell into place. This was Meng Hao, the one Wang Tengfei always muttered about. Your Meng Hao, the state of Zhao disappeared. You. Clever girl, said Meng Hao, then took to flight. Now that she knew, her killing intent blazed. She pursued, shocked. Years ago he was 5th or 6th level chi condensation. Now foundation establishment, not fractured but cracked. She was 80 to 90% sure. The events of a few years ago in the state of Zhao had caused substantial waves of shock to ripple through the southern domain. Chu Yuyan was amazed that Meng Hao would appear here. Obviously, he must have escaped from the state of Zhao before it disappeared. Meanwhile, at a location far from the central region of the southern domain, an enormous rock appeared. It emanated a powerful death aura as it flew in from the Milky Way Sea. It moved at incredible speed, whipping up fierce winds as it passed. Lightning filled the sky around it. Anyone who didn't immediately get out of its way would be whipped up into the whirlwind it created and tossed to who knew where. Mountains split beneath its screams. Many cultivators saw it, their hearts quivering at the thought of treasures on its body. Some chased but were too slow, left far behind in moments. This rock was dying, yet it flew as a sovereign of the sky. Chapter 111, The Rock and the Flying Rain Dragon. Chu Yuyan had a flawless foundation. She was the daughter of the Violet Fatesec sect leader and a disciple of Grandmaster Pill Demon, and her latent talent ranked third in the entire sect. Her father had sent a special request to the Upright clan in the eastern lands for a flawless foundation pill, rare in the southern domain. The Violet Fate sect had paid quite a price for it. As she pursued Meng Hao, her eyes flashed. By her judgment, Meng Hao could not have a flawless foundation. In the current generation, only 8 chosen possessed them, 1 from each of the 5 clans and 3 sects. Even Wang Tengfei had only a cracked foundation. As one of many chosen in the large Wang clan, he was not among the most illustrious. Most attention focused on his older brother. Meng Hao, her eyes flickered and a cold smile twisted her mouth. A trifling cracked foundation, you have only a few strange magical items. She increased her speed. Both transformed into beams of light screaming through the sky above the state of eastern emergence. At the middle foundation establishment stage, Chu Yuyan was faster than Meng Hao. Soon she caught up. Boom! A massive explosion rocked the air. Chu Yuyan incanted and sent violet mist shooting at Meng Hao. The lightning flag's mist blocked it, then dissipated. Meng Hao continued fleeing, looking back coldly. You might be fast, but you can't catch me. I paid the highest price at the auction. The spring and autumn tree is mine, it's just the will of the heavens. I will capture you today, not for the spring and autumn tree, but for Wang Tengfei's finger and an explanation of how you obtained Ding Xin's black bow. She flew through the air, beautiful and elegant, her clothes rippling. She had managed to change her dress, covering skin that had previously been exposed. Meng Hao didn't reply, but a sneer appeared in his eyes. From their encounter, he determined that Chu Yuyan was at the middle foundation establishment stage and he couldn't defeat her. But capturing him would not be easy. He continued forward. For nearly 2 hours they flew. She tried several times to seize him, but the lightning mist protected him. Each clash rang out and he pressed on. Chu Yuyan grew frustrated. Evening fell and Chu Yuyan's frown deepened. She ignored Meng Hao's cultivation base and focused on the powerful lightning mist, extremely difficult to break through. She ground her teeth and slapped her bag of holding. An ancient oil lamp appeared, one of her most valuable treasures, never used in battle, but to capture Meng Hao she couldn't hold it in reserve. Though unlit, the lamp filled the air with archaic noise. Chu Yuyan took a deep breath and blew on the wick. Her face paled, then a tongue of flame appeared. The lit lamp filled the entire 300-meter area with a bright sheet of countless flames. It had no shape and could not be touched, only seen. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. Spotlight threads unite. Her clear voice rang out, and the bright lights filling the area separated into multiple threads, which then blocked off Meng Hao's path of escape to the left, right, and ahead. They slowly began to surround him. Even as Meng Hao realized the dangerous situation he was in, the lightning mist began to shrink. It appeared that the enveloping threads of light were causing it to dissipate. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he stopped moving forward. Instead, he reversed his direction, the lightning mist swirling around his body as he shot toward Chu Yuyan. Her eyes narrowed as he charged. She pushed her palms together, and a huge field of violet chi poured from her head, swirling around her. She struck out with both hands toward Meng Hao. The violet chi coalesced into a long violet dragon that roared and charged. Within the lightning mist, Meng Hao saw the violet dragon approaching. His right hand flashed an incantation gesture and then waved forward. The lightning mist roiled and then made a beeline for the approaching dragon. At the same time, his left hand slapped his bag of holding. 100 flying swords emerged. Meng Hao took control of them with this spiritual sense, causing them to form a whirlwind of swords. When it, along with the lightning mist, collided with the violet dragon, a huge explosion ripped out. But the sword whirlwind continued on toward Chu Yuyan. Her oil lamp had trapped Meng Hao. The closing threads of light would prevent his escape. Her face calm, she slapped her bag of holding. A red, white, and black fan appeared, which she waved ahead of her 3 times. The first wave produced a red glow that became a large red horn. The second produced white glow that became a rhinoceros, to which the horn attached. The third produced a black glow that coalesced into black armor covering the rhino. Waving its head wildly, the rhino charged toward Meng Hao's sword whirlwind. Meng Hao shouted and the sword whirlwind collapsed. All the swords exploded, their fragments flying about before fusing together and shooting toward the black-armored rhino. Simultaneously, the lightning mist expanded with a roar, filling the 300-meter area. Meng Hao's body flashed toward Chu Yuyan, covered in lightning mist. A flame python flew from his right hand, drawing a light snort from her. Bells appeared in her hand with tinkling sounds that made the flame python wail. Disdain on her face, she lifted her hand and waved it toward Meng Hao. Violet chi poured from her fingers, racing toward him. Shining threads of light had reached several meters from Meng Hao, completely under Chu Yuyan's control. A gleam appeared in Meng Hao's eyes as the violet chi neared him. Expressions flickered across his face and he retreated, appearing to fumble as he slapped his bag of holding. A wooden sword appeared and slammed into the violet chi. A second sword shot out, followed by a small black net. To Chu Yuyan, it seemed she had forced him to rush his attack. Why else would he suddenly use so many treasures? It seemed beyond reason. "You're a backwater cultivator from a backwater nation," said Chu Yuyan coolly, raising her hand. "Even at Foundation establishment, you have only a cracked foundation. You don't deserve to show your face." Her middle Foundation establishment cultivation base flared. The 4 Dao pillars within her body surged, and gale force wind blew from her right hand. Meng Hao's wooden swords twisted in the air, and the black net rocked back and forth. But at this moment Meng Hao's eyes gleamed brightly. The black net suddenly grew larger. As the light threads contracted around him like iron bands, the net shot toward Chu Yuyan. Its sudden speed and growth gave her no time to react. In a blink she was enveloped and the net shrank around her, pinning her tight. As it contracted, her white dress shredded again, revealing her graceful curves. She was both angry and nervous, hate filling her eyes as she glared at Meng Hao with murderous intent. "I don't need to show my face anywhere," he said coolly, looking back at Chu Yuyan. "Catching you while I'm tied up is good enough." The threads of light had securely tightened around him. Both were momentarily incapacitated. Neither dared use spiritual energy against the other. They were in a deadlock. Chu Yuyan's murderous intent grew stronger, and even Meng Hao showed killing intent. Everything grew quiet. Both circulated their cultivation bases, attempting to free themselves. Whoever got free first would win. Time passed slowly. Soon dusk arrived. Meng Hao rotated his cultivation base rapidly and felt the threads of light growing looser. Chu Yuyan did the same. Under her cultivation base's power, the black net began to show weaknesses. Far in the distance, wind sounds grew audible. At first weak, causing Chu Yuyan's hair to drift and Meng Hao's eyes to dry, it quickly grew stronger until it whipped about wildly. A black shadow appeared off in the distance, a colossal flying bird. The rock from the Milky Way Sea, flying toward the rebirth cave. Like a sovereign of the sky, every flying thing must bow to this rock. As its will of the heavens exuded out, the demonic core within Meng Hao's Dao pillar began to shake, wishing to battle this sovereign. Because the flying rain dragon is also a sovereign of the sky. The wind grew even more violent. Meng Hao's body was pulled backward. Chu Yuyan's expression changed as she too was pulled up. Meng Hao's lightning mist, Chu Yuyan's oil lamp flame, and the wooden swords were all pulled into motion. It seemed they would all be blown away. This chapter was sponsored by Audiobook. Chapter 112, Things Chain. "That's a rock," cried Chu Yuyan. "In South Heaven, rocks emerge only from the Milky Way Sea. Meng Hao let me loose. The death aura emanating from it shows it's about to die and heading to the rebirth cave. Its wind will sweep everything away." "You release me first," he said coldly, feeling the demonic core within his Dao pillar shake. "You," said Chu Yuyan, gnashing her teeth. She was about to speak when suddenly the wind's ferocity increased dramatically. In a blink, a roaring sound filled the earth. Countless mountain peaks shattered and crumbled, sending rock fragments flying. The rock suddenly changed directions. Having sensed the power of the demonic core within Meng Hao, mysterious light shone from its eyes. It screamed through the air toward Chu Yuyan and Meng Hao. The sky grew dark as gale-force winds swept the land, threatening to carry everything away. Everything in this region belonged to the rock and it alone. A twisting whirlwind accompanied the rock's arrival. Mountains crumbled and trees were ripped up by their roots in a shocking display of power. The wind swept up Meng Hao and Chu Yuyan. The oil lamp hovering next to Chu Yuyan shook violently and was extinguished. The instant it did, the threads of light that bound him disappeared. The demonic core erupted within him as it had when the legacy first appeared. Images from ancient times filled Meng Hao's head, a flying rain dragon and rock locked in combat. Boom! A wave crashed onto his mind. He spun toward the whirlwind, feeling crushed. Blood sprayed from his mouth. Like a kite with a severed string, his body flopped over and over as he was sucked up. In his last moments before consciousness faded, he sent out his remaining spiritual energy to drag the wooden swords and lightning flag back. Then darkness took him. Chu Yuyan was in an even worse situation. As she was sucked upward, she coughed up blood. Her body remained wrapped in the black net as she tumbled upward along with her oil lamp. Her face was pale and filled with despair. Another gust from the rock buffeted her, drawing more blood from her mouth, and she slipped into unconsciousness. Though Meng Hao and Chu Yuyan were both Foundation establishment cultivators, the rock's screaming wind made them completely powerless to resist. Thankfully, unlike mountains rooted to the land, they offered resistance. The wind left them battered rather than torn to pieces. The two of them were like plucked willow catkins, powerless to offer any resistance. They were hurt by the buffeting wind and knocked unconscious, but were not ripped to pieces. The wind held them tight and carried them off into the distance. The wind continued to sweep across the state of eastern emergence for several days after the rock's passage, before finally dying down. Meng Hao's eyes opened. His entire body hurt, his eyes flickering as consciousness returned. All-encompassing pain filled him, making him tremble as if he might fall to pieces. Calm slowly settled in his eyes. The pain was alarming but didn't compare to poison flare-ups. He was used to such pain. He slowly struggled into a sitting position, panting. His clothing lay in shreds and bruises and abrasions covered his skin. Countless wounds marked him, some deeper than others. Some areas had lost skin entirely. Bumping against nearby rocks sent piercing pain deep into his bones. He gasped for breath as he examined himself. His eyes grew wide, his body felt weak, almost like it had 6 or 7 years ago on Mount Ducheng. My cultivation base. He immediately attempted to circulate it. Relief filled him when he found it still there. But then he frowned. He was completely incapable of accessing it, as if blocked by some powerful force. Glancing over his destroyed clothing, he realized none of his bags of holding remained on his person. They'd been blown away by the raging wind. His face fell. He lifted his hand and reached deep into his robe. When he pulled it out, the bag of the cosmos was there. This bag differed from ordinary bags of holding, and Meng Hao always kept it tucked inside his robe. The wind hadn't touched it. "Good thing I keep most of my things inside the bag of the cosmos," he muttered, "including my wooden swords and the lightning flag. Otherwise this would have been a horrible loss." He tried to open it but failed. Sighing, he looked around. Black mists wafted to and fro in the darkness. Strange rocks covered the ground along with countless bones of birds and beasts, their deathly white color showing long decay. Meng Hao grew even more surprised, but then he noticed some bones were human. He looked up toward the sky but saw only endless swirling mists. What is this place? A grim look settled on his face. A sense of imminent danger welled within him. I wonder if the change to my cultivation base came from the great wind or from this place. A long time passed before he gathered enough energy to grit his teeth and struggle to his feet. Supporting himself on a nearby rock, he slowly walked forward. Time passed for an incense stick to burn, and Meng Hao came to a halt. A wall of black rock rose before him, disappearing into the mist so he couldn't see its top. Meng Hao looked behind him. He realized he was likely at the bottom of a deep abyss. The rock's wind carried me to the bottom of this precipice. I don't know what part of the state of eastern emergence I'm in. I need to restore my cultivation base to escape. He leaned against the cliff wall and sank down to build his energy. Time passed without measure in the darkness. Slowly, his strength returned. He tried again to open the bag of the cosmos but failed. He gave up and stood, looking around until he spotted a tree branch about as wide as his arm. Using it for support, he walked again. "If this is a cliff, it will have an end," he said. Everything was quiet, only his heartbeat audible. He took a deep breath and decided to explore until he found a way out. He walked slowly, caution on his face. The place felt ghastly and he wasn't sure what danger lurked, but he had to search. If danger appeared, so be it. About 4 hours passed and Meng Hao felt himself slowly recovering. Having reached Foundation establishment after completing the great circle of qi condensation, his body was naturally much tougher than before. But his heart began to sink. After all this time, he still hadn't found a way out. The strange rocks seemed to be growing more dense. After another hour, he suddenly stopped. His eyes gleamed with a strange light, and a cold smile twisted his mouth. A person lay on one of the strange rocks ahead. A dilapidated, torn white gown revealed great swaths of smooth skin. Long hair lay in disarray around Chu Yuyan. She lay there unconscious with a small black net beside her. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he slowly approached. He placed his finger beneath her nose, then felt a patch of exposed flesh on her abdomen. The skin was soft. He pressed down hard, then stepped aside, grabbed the black net and tucked it away. She's not dead. Her cultivation base is there, just suppressed. She has no way to access her spiritual energy. His eyes narrowed as he looked at her for a long moment. He laughed. I know you're awake. No need to pretend. Chu Yuyan didn't move. Meng Hao let out a cold snort and poked at her with the long branch. Her eyes snapped open and she glared at him coldly. Meng Hao smiled. It was very boring in this abyss. His gaze passed over her body, her delicate curves, the skin revealed by her torn clothing and the edges of her red undergarment. She was extremely beautiful. Her face flushed and anger filled her eyes as she stared murderously. She struggled to cover herself, then gasped in pain. Her gasp echoed strangely in the silence. Hearing it, Meng Hao laughed. What are you laughing at, you despicable, dirty thing? She cried out. Meng Hao lifted his hand and slapped her directly across the face, his eyes cold. Shut up. You? Her expression turned livid as a palm print appeared on her beautiful face. Meng Hao had slapped her viciously, making her tremble. In her entire life, no one had ever dared strike her. Even Wang Tengfei treated her like an honored guest. Another slap rang out in the same spot. I told you to shut up, he said calmly. Wang Tengfei might treat you like a precious gem. To me, you're nothing. She gritted her teeth and stared him in the eye. With her cultivation base suppressed, she was like a mortal. Danger welled up inside her. Once a high and mighty chosen, now she had fallen far. She was simply a weak woman at Meng Hao's mercy. Chapter 113. An Altar in a Lake. We've rested enough, said Meng Hao coolly. Get up, you walk in front. Chu Yuyan said nothing. Grinding her teeth, she struggled to her feet. Her clothes shifted, revealing more of her body. Her face was pale white but turned crimson. Her hatred for Meng Hao was now even greater than Wang Tengfei's. She had lost access to her cultivation base and was now a tender woman. She couldn't compare to Meng Hao. Though he had started as a scholar, his body's strength and toughness far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators. While not as strong as body cultivators, his recovery and strength were far from ordinary, else he wouldn't have recovered consciousness far more quickly than Chu Yuyan. She could only endure and comply with his demand, her fury deepening. Meng Hao was aware of this. He walked behind her, looking at her graceful figure. The rips in her garment revealed large swaths of skin on her back. He had her walk in front because he still felt danger in this place. Chu Yuyan would act as a wind vane, providing advance notice of any threat. They moved forward in single file. Meng Hao changed their course by pointing and giving instructions. Chu Yuyan had no choice but to clench her jaw and comply. Hatred for Meng Hao had seeped into her bones. She could only obey. A very long time passed and it seemed they had explored everywhere. Everything was cliff face with no exits. Strange rocks and skeletons of various birds and beasts littered the landscape. Was this some sort of death trap? Meng Hao grew more silent. Chu Yuyan's mood slowly fell until despair showed in her eyes. They followed the cliff face and eventually realized they were walking in a large circle. Sometimes they would rest against it before continuing. One day they reached an area with an unusually large amount of bones. Suddenly they caught sight of a lake. Its shores were piled with countless bones, many human. It was impossible to tell how many years they had been there. The aura was gruesome and filled with the stink of blood. In fact, this was a lake of blood. As Chu Yuyan approached the lake, its calm surface began to ripple. As tiny waves spread, Meng Hao stopped. Chu Yuyan's face drained of blood and her body quivered. Intense danger filled her, as if something horrifying existed within, watching her. Walk back slowly, said Meng Hao softly, standing further from the lake. Don't panic, one step at a time. Biting her lip, Chu Yuyan slowly moved back several meters. The lake began to roil and piercing shrieks echoed from within. She moved backward as quickly as she could. Amidst the ringing shrieks, a dark green altar suddenly rose from the lake. Waves swelled across its blood surface. Figures appeared from within the blood. It was difficult to tell male from female because they had no skin, only bloody flesh. They carried the dark stone altar on their shoulders as it rose. The altar was over 150 meters in diameter. As it rose, it emitted a sickly reddish-green glow. On top was a stone throne of the same dark green stone. Sitting on it was a corpse. A death aura wafted around it, its face covered with a white, featureless mask. Meng Hao's pupils constricted and he stood motionless. Chu Yuyan stood pale-faced, equally unwilling to move. 10 breaths passed, then the stone altar slowly began to sink. The bloody lake's surface grew still, and everything returned to quietness. Meng Hao let out a long breath and walked backward slowly. Chu Yuyan did the same. When they had retreated about 300 meters, the sense of imminent danger slowly faded from their hearts. What was that? Said Chu Yuyan, her first voluntary words in days. Her voice was weak and hoarse. Meng Hao didn't reply. He turned and walked off. Chu Yuyan hesitated, then followed silently. They returned to the cliff face and a natural cave they had discovered earlier. Inside, Meng Hao sat down cross-legged. Chu Yuyan leaned back against the cave wall, her arms hugging her legs, staring blankly outside. She was a proud woman, but what had happened, coupled with her cultivation base's suppression, Meng Hao's presence, gradually filled her heart with despair. Her only hope was that the Violet Fate sect would track her here. But this place was strange, apparently suppressing cultivation bases. Most likely it also suppressed the brand of the Violet Fate sect in her body, making it impossible for them to find her. Her clothes were in tatters and couldn't cover her sufficiently. More than half her body was exposed, especially in this posture. Almost all her legs were visible. Time passed. Each day Meng Hao placed a rock into a small pile beside him. 8 rocks stood there. 8 days had passed. Their cultivation bases were locked down, preventing spiritual energy from dispersing. Luckily, they didn't need food, but this place had no spiritual energy. If this continued, they would grow hungry. Stuck in a remote abyss, they needed the energy of heaven and earth, except there wasn't any. During those 8 days, Meng Hao spent about half his time circulating his cultivation base, trying to break through what suppressed it. He hoped to open his bag of holding at least. He experienced no success. The rest of the time he took Chu Yuyan out to search for a way out. Having searched so many times, they found no exit. The only thing they discovered was that many vipers lurked about. "I think this place is an inactive volcano, not just a hole," said Chu Yuyan. She sat in the small cave looking out. She wasn't reconciled to cooperating with Meng Hao but couldn't think of any way out. Meng Hao sat quietly at the cave's mouth, looking out with a frown. Chu Yuyan looked at him sitting cross-legged, then suddenly blurted, "I need a change of clothes." Her eyes were solemn and earnest in a way they hadn't been all this time. Despite her haggard state, this look would cause desire to blossom in any man who gazed upon her. Meng Hao closed his eyes. "I don't have any," he said coolly. "You have some in your bag of holding." Her clothes were ragged and soiled, revealing more than half her body. Even more undergarments were now visible. Her flesh appeared soft and supple. Half covered, half exposed, the sight was incredibly enticing. Meng Hao's eyes snapped open and he looked at her coldly. His gaze swept over her body, her curves, her beautiful features. Most men would immediately burn with fiery heat. 8 days before, Meng Hao couldn't have caught a glimpse of her body even if he wanted to. If he had, she would never have given up until he was dead. But now, as he looked at her, she only unconsciously covered her chest. She had no way to prevent him from looking. "You're right," he said slowly. "I do have clothes in my bag of holding, but I'm unable to open it because of the lack of spiritual energy here." "There's a way," she said quietly, "a way to open your bag and take clothes out." He looked at her coolly, his face calm and expressionless. Chu Yuyan had assumed he would ask for details, but after waiting a long moment she saw he wasn't speaking. With a cold harumph she continued. "My cultivation method is the Violet Fate Sect's Violet Qi from the East. 1. The name of the technique Violet Qi from the East is also a Chinese idiom which means a sign of good luck. 2 people can practice this cultivation together. Though spiritual energy is suppressed here, if I teach you the method and we work together, we might succeed. Then your bag can open." He pondered, then shook his head. "I don't believe you. Explain further." "Believe if you want," Chu Yuyan said coldly, frowning. "If you don't believe, forget it." She sat in a far corner of the cave. When Meng Hao glanced back, she unconsciously tried to cover herself. She glared at him, covering her legs with her arms. "I don't have many clothes," he said calmly, "but enough to cover you. If you don't want them, forget about it." He closed his eyes. An hour passed, during which Chu Yuyan ground her beautiful teeth. She couldn't tolerate being exposed this way. Soon she wouldn't be able to cover herself at all. Clenching her jaw, she said, "I lost my bag of holding in the wind, so I can't test it. But the method I mentioned should work. Violet Qi from the East is no ordinary technique. It was passed down from the eastern lands. If 2 people practice it together, its power can open the vault of the heavens. If you have doubts, I can teach you the first mnemonic. If you master it, I'll tell you the second, then the third. You can try to open your bag. All I need is some clothes." Meng Hao opened his eyes and looked at her. His face was expressionless, but a cold sneer lived in his heart. He had experienced many hardships in the state of Zhao and was no longer an ignorant youth. He was calculating. How could he not see she was setting a trap? "Speak," he said coldly. This chapter was sponsored by Tan Ki Yuan, Benedict Jua and Hein Hodgeberg. Chapter 114. Many thanks, fellow Taoist Chu. Chu Yuyan slowly recited the secret method of the Violet Fate Sect. Violet Qi from the East. Cultivate the 9 violet Qis of heaven and earth. Use the method that comes from the East. Understand the rise of the sun and moon. Transform the will of your heart. Observe the brilliance. Taste the moonlight. She spoke slowly, watching Meng Hao sit apparently lost in thought. In her heart she smiled coldly. He surely guesses I'm not after clothing, but I've got him hooked. He wants to open his bag as much as I do. He won't take that brief moment just to get me clothes. He'll take magical items or medicinal pills, but whatever he takes, once he learns violet chi to the west, he'll be crippled. Hesitation flickered on her face as she slowly repeated the mnemonic. This was not violet chi from the east, but rather a top-secret mnemonic developed later by the Violet Fate sect, called Violet Chi to the West. Even Wang Tengfei didn't know about it. It was taught only to special sect members to provide spiritual power and life force to chosen. Every chosen could select someone to practice Violet Chi to the West. A sect elder would participate to prevent resistance and keep them stable. After successfully performing the technique, that person became a type of clone of the chosen, and the chosen could absorb their cultivation base and life force with Violet Chi from the east. The combination of the two arts gave the Violet Fate sect its current position in the southern domain. Chu Yuyan had not yet used Violet Chi to the west on anyone. But she had no other option now. Despite its power, there were potentially dangerous side effects. Usually sect elders would stand by, ready to assist against mishaps. "If you have no problems with the first mnemonic, I'll give you a bit of blood," said Chu Yuyan calmly. "It's impossible to see the sun, and without the sun or moon in sight, it's difficult to absorb violet chi, but there is some in my blood which will help you use the technique." Meng Hao looked up at her, his eyes flickering. Inside, he was laughing coldly. Before she'd even uttered the mnemonic, he'd guessed her ill intentions. He just didn't know exactly how she planned to harm him. Having heard the first mnemonic, he had a faint clue. She was teaching him this method so that even if it opened his bag, it would eventually harm him. He suddenly stood up, walked over and squatted in front of her. He grabbed her hair and pulled her head close. She tried to struggle but wasn't strong enough. Even more of her body was exposed as she resisted. "Meng Hao, what are you doing?" she cried, her expression changing. Anxiety filled her heart and her body shook. Her lips were only about 1 inch from his. She could smell his breath. His hand held the top of her head like an iron pincer. She couldn't move backward. "You don't need to give me your blood, I'll take it myself." He pulled her head to the side and ruthlessly bit into her shoulder, chomping deep into the flesh. Her body trembled and fierce hatred erupted in her eyes. He was so close she could feel his warmth. From a distance they almost looked like a couple embracing. A moment later, Meng Hao loosened his grip and rose. Not glancing at her again, he returned to his spot and sat in meditation. Her blood dripped down the side of his face. His eyes closed, he began to cultivate according to the mnemonic Chu Yuyan had taught him. It took a long moment for Chu Yuyan to settle her breathing and recover her composure. She stared hatefully at him. "Just wait until you finish practicing this technique," she thought. "I'll suck up your cultivation base and chop you to pieces. I'll use your energy to activate the branding in my body. Then the Violet Fate sect will find me." She ground her teeth until they might shatter, vowing to pay back 10 times the insult she'd endured today, especially the pain in her shoulder and the bite marks. It was something she simply couldn't accept. Several hours passed. Meng Hao's eyes snapped open. Violet had appeared within his pupils. Chu Yuyan felt a little better seeing it. "The second mnemonic," said Meng Hao casually. Without hesitation, Chu Yuyan told him the second mnemonic. "Violet Chi returns to the lake, dyeing the banks of the Tao Pillar. 9 rotations in 3 layers, a branding of a violet dragon." More time passed, longer than before. Chu Yuyan was starting to feel hesitant. Back in the sect, the person selected by elder brother Li only needed 2 hours under an elder's watch. Why is Meng Hao so slow? Her hesitation continued on for another 4 hours. Finally, Meng Hao opened his eyes. The violet glow was even stronger. When she saw this, Chu Yuyan let out a sigh of relief. He must just have ordinary latent talent, so it takes longer for him to cultivate. Next, she told him the third mnemonic. Meng Hao thought for a while in silence. Then he closed his eyes and began to meditate. This time took even longer. 2 complete days passed before he finished. However, when his eyes opened, his pupils appeared to be completely violet and his eyes glowed the same color. In fact, his whole body seemed to be emitting a faint violet glow. Chu Yuyan was originally a bit worried, but seeing the thick violet color within his eyes, her cultivation base seemed to twitch vigorously. Her mind was now made up. Now there's only one more step, she thought, and when that's finished, he's doomed. Her eyes flickered slightly and she said, "Now we practice cultivation together. When we combine our power, the bag of holding will open. You need to pay very close attention when that happens. You cannot slack off. The moment will be fleeting, and if you don't get into the bag of holding, then there won't be a second chance." As she spoke, her loathing for him seemed to come out and settle onto his body. She lifted up her hands. "Just hold on for a bit longer," she thought, laughing coldly to herself, "and then everything will be over." Meng Hao's face was expressionless. He looked coldly at her, his violet pupils flickering. He took out the bag of the cosmos and placed it beside him. He lifted his hands and placed his palms against hers. Suddenly, both of their suppressed cultivation bases began to boil. The reaction grew stronger and white qi rose from their bodies. Sweat ran down their faces. Meng Hao sensed the violet-colored spiritual power in his body being called toward his hands and Chu Yuyan. The violet glow in his eyes began to fade. At this moment, Meng Hao felt the suppressive force on his cultivation base loosen. A sliver of spiritual power emerged. Without hesitation, he sent it toward the bag of the cosmos. It glowed and something emerged. "Violet qi from the east into the west bind," cried Chu Yuyan, ignoring what emerged. Her eyes shined brightly. At that moment, as Meng Hao's cultivation-based power rushed toward her, she felt her own energy shake. In 2 breaths, it was like his cultivation base had disappeared completely. She couldn't absorb anything more of it. "He has a foundation establishment cultivation base. It's impossible I absorbed only this little." Her expression changed as she looked at him. He looked back with a sneering smile. Not the slightest trace of violet remained in his eyes. Chu Yuyan's heart flip-flopped and her face twisted with disbelief. She scrambled backward. "You." "Many thanks, fellow Taoist Chu," he said coolly. He lifted his hand and the object emerged from the bag of the cosmos, flying into it. It was a crystal stone, not an ordinary crystal, but one of the 3 extra large spirit stones remaining in his bag. Her face went pale as she pressed herself against the rocky wall. Her heart pounded, unable to figure out why violet qi to the west had failed. She had definitely sensed him practicing the technique, and the violet color in his eyes couldn't have been faked. Her own cultivation base couldn't have begun to boil, nor could she have absorbed the tiny bit of his that she had. Her body trembled. Her plan had been made on the spot and had flaws. It was a gamble and she was sure she'd hooked him. Once hooked, he shouldn't have been able to escape. Yet the facts remained. Chu Yuyan's heart trembled. As she looked at Meng Hao, she was suddenly struck with how unpredictable he was. But then she noticed the large spirit stone in his hand. Her pupils constricted. She looked closer and began to pant, disbelief covering her face. "That's an ultra-high-grade spirit stone." Chapter 115. Do you want out? Meng Hao looked at Chu Yuyan for a moment. Then he shoved his hand toward the rocky wall, slashing a wound into his palm. Blood oozed out. Chu Yuyan gasped. Meng Hao shoved the large spirit stone into the wound. Chu Yuyan could almost feel how much it hurt. Meng Hao didn't frown. Compared to pain from poison flare-ups, this was nothing. As the spirit stone buried into his palm's flesh, a soaring explosion of spiritual energy entered his body. His eyes flashed like lightning. His suppressed Tao pillar suddenly shook, sucking up large amounts of spiritual energy and circulating it throughout his body. His second core C was nowhere to be seen. Actually, Chu Yuyan's technique hadn't affected Meng Hao because of his second core C. He had practiced violet qi to the west there, where there was no Tao pillar. That's why it took so long. Chu Yuyan had absorbed only the power of Meng Hao's second core C, whose power was like that of a firefly. Now that his cultivation base circulated, Meng Hao smacked his bag of holding and summoned the lightning flag. It surrounded him with flickering electricity mist, causing Chu Yuyan to back away, her face pale. She stared dumbly at the mist, her mind blank. Protected by it, Meng Hao closed his eyes and continued circulating his cultivation base. The suppressive force still existed, but he could now gradually feel his cultivation base's motion. First level of qi condensation, second, third. He was able to exert power similar to the 7th level of qi condensation. His eyes flickering, he took in a deep breath. The mist around him rolled inward, condensing into a small flag which he then placed into his mouth. He stood, grabbing up the bag of the cosmos and retrieving a medicinal pill which he placed into the center of his palm. The wound slowly began to close up, congealing into a scab. As for the large spirit stone, it was still stuck inside the wound. If he took it out, his cultivation base would once again be suppressed, and he would become like a mortal. At the moment, the most power he could muster was that of the 7th level of qi condensation. Ignoring Chu Yuyan, Meng Hao smacked the bag of the cosmos again, and a wooden sword flew out. He stepped onto it, and turned into a beam of light that shot upward into the air. Within the fisher-like cave, Chu Yuyan watched in shock as he disappeared, her heart filled with complicated, bitter emotions. Everything was quiet. The silence contained unspeakable loneliness, spreading everywhere and submerging Chu Yuyan. She laughed silently. She was in some undetermined location, at the bottom of a volcano no one would think to look in. She was trapped like someone buried alive in a tomb. Meng Hao flew on a wooden sword, his eyes shining. Soon he left the mists behind. His speed increased, though not much. He still wielded only the 7th level's power and his body wasn't in top condition. When the mists disappeared, he found himself looking up at a starry sky. His face brightened. But then his eyes narrowed and he came to a stop. He didn't emerge from the mouth of the volcano but stood looking up at it. Had he not been careful, he might have overlooked the nearly transparent shield covering the mouth, some kind of seal. Meng Hao's eyes flashed as he retrieved a flying sword from the bag of the cosmos. With a flick of his sleeve, he sent it shooting toward the shield. The instant it ran into the shield, the sword turned to ash. No sound rang out. Meng Hao watched with a grim look. He spit out the lightning flag, which transformed into mist and shot toward the shield. It could stand against Foundation establishment power, but when it hit the shield, it couldn't push through. It collapsed and began to show signs of destruction. Meng Hao quickly called the lightning flag back. In only a few seconds, several cracks had appeared on its surface. Could one enter but not leave? Even the lightning flag can't break through. What would happen if I ran into the shield? He frowned. The stars were visible outside, but the shield blocked his way. His eyes flashing, he flew back down on the wooden sword and soon landed on the misty floor. He glanced around, walked to a section of rock, and moments later flew back up with a brightly colored 3-meter-long vapor in his hand. The snake writhed, bearing fangs dripping with venom. Meng Hao held it behind its head so it couldn't bite. Back at the shield, he tossed the viper toward it. As soon as it hit, its body became a mist of blood and gore. An intact skeleton fell back into the mists. Meng Hao took a breath, looking apprehensive. Then he gave a cold snort and smacked his bag of the cosmos. A vast quantity of flying swords appeared. He flicked his finger and the swords shot toward the rock wall. Booms rang out as they dug a hole. But as they carved inward, a sound rang out like gold striking iron. Meng Hao looked into the deep hole and around at the rock walls. The dark green rock was covered with flickering magical symbols, obviously under a restrictive spell. Meng Hao let out a sigh. He tried a few more methods, but the result was always the same. Finally, he dug a small pit into the rock wall and sat down cross-legged. He looked up silently at the shield. He sat like that for 7 days, trying various methods to break through the shield. None worked. More time passed. Soon a month had gone. The shield trapped him. But at the volcano's bottom, Chu Yuyan didn't know. She assumed he was long gone. On the first day, she sat outside, her arms wrapped around her legs. She looked completely different from the beautiful woman from before, now more like a withered flower. When the 3rd day arrived, she sat looking outside the cave, frustration in her eyes, her face pale. The 3rd, 5th, 8th days passed. Soon 10, then 13 days had passed. More frustration appeared in her eyes and she grew hungrier. Her body grew cold. She felt like the only person alive in the entire world. She grew more forlorn. When Meng Hao was here, this feeling hadn't existed. Then she had just hated him, wishing him a miserable death. 13 days after his disappearance, loneliness surrounded her like a giant mouth ready to swallow her. She was now completely convinced no Qi could escape this place. Otherwise, the Violet Fate Sect would have found her. Soon a month would pass with no one coming. There was only one explanation. The 23rd, then 26th day passed. Fear grew stronger amidst the surrounding silence. Her body trembled and she felt incredibly alone. The depth of silence made her feel as if in some sort of illusion. She sensed countless shadows walking to and fro. She shivered. At this moment, she was no longer a chosen. She was simply a frail young woman. She clenched her jaw, not emitting a sound, refusing to shed tears. During the month, Meng Hao sat beneath the shield in the lightning mist protection. He'd used every idea he could think of to break through, but it remained the same. Even his voice couldn't pass through, though he hadn't seen anyone in the sky above anyway. Finally, one night, black clouds filled the sky and a torrential downpour began. Rain fell through the shield onto his lightning mist. Suddenly, a peal of thunder rang out with a bolt of lightning. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed and he looked closely at the shield. After a moment, another bolt descended. His eyes began to shine. He noticed that every time lightning struck, the shield rippled. Lightning bolts can affect it. If lightning strikes it, maybe the shield can open. His heart began to thump. A huge group of metal flying swords appeared. He tossed them, hoping to attract lightning bolts. But the thunder and rain vanished and the sky grew bright. He hadn't attracted any lightning bolts, but hope now burned in his eyes. I can't attract lightning. Maybe it's because of the shield itself. If only there was a way to force it down and blow the shield open. I need something to attract it. A light of inspiration shined in his head. He retrieved a piece of turtle shell from the bag of the cosmos, the formula for the perfect foundation pill. He looked it over closely, and his eyes began to shine brighter, filled with determination. Establishing a perfect foundation is not permitted by the heavens and will provoke tribulation lightning. He put the turtle shell away and sat in silent contemplation. After a time, his body flashed toward the mists below. Soon he reached the volcano's bottom and Chu Yuyan. He looked at her frustrated, pale face. When she caught sight of him, she reflexively said, "Your Grandmaster Pill Demon's disciple," said Meng Hao coldly. "Do you know anything about alchemy?" She nodded silently. "Do you want out?" his eyes flashed. As his words reached her ears, Chu Yuyan's body began to tremble. Gradually, life seeped back into her eyes. Chapter 116, Legacy of an Immortal. There's a shield above which prevents escape, he said coolly. I can't break through it, but after a month of observation I noticed lightning can distort it. Chu Yuyan's eyes no longer held frustration. They shined with life and charm. Meng Hao lifted his hand and made a snatching motion. A hissing viper flew toward him, which he grabbed deftly, pushing his finger into its head's weak spot. Holding the snake, he looked calmly at her. Not bothering to explain, he walked forward and grabbed her supple waist. Her face turned crimson. Because of her clothing's raggedness, his hand landed directly onto her skin. His body flashed as the flying sword beneath his feet shot upward, Chu Yuyan in tow. They shot up, speeding out of the mists and soon reaching the shield. Meng Hao tossed the snake toward it. Chu Yuyan didn't avert her eyes, watching its body turn into a haze of blood and its white skeleton fall back down. Her expression flickered. Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding and 10 flying swords appeared. They turned into multicolored beams of light as they shot forward, subsequently turning to ash. Having done this, Meng Hao stared at her with cold eyes. Then, holding her close, he flew back down to the volcano's bottom. Being held by him felt strange. As soon as they stepped onto the ground, she moved backward several paces. What pill do you need? She asked calmly. 7 Thunders pill, he said, his expression unchanged. 7 Thunders pill, she said with a frown. She'd never heard of such a pill. I acquired it from an ancient location. It can provoke lightning from the heavens. If you concoct it, we can leave. He said nothing more, letting her weigh the pros and cons. Further explanation could raise questions. She was silent a moment. To concoct pills, I would need a pill furnace. Though she'd never heard of a 7 Thunders pill, she'd seen the shield. Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding and produced a small pill furnace the size of a hand. He'd acquired it from Shang Yuanziu's bag of holding, which Shang Yuanziu had prepared to concoct pills. 7-star Jade furnace. When Chu Yuyan saw the furnace, shock covered her face. She knew this type. Its quality was extraordinary and extremely valuable. She looked back at Meng Hao. In addition to a furnace, I would need the fire of heaven and earth. Meng Hao lifted his hand and 2 wooden swords appeared. They slammed into the ground, spiraling downward. A moment passed, then a rumbling sound. Hot air billowed out, followed by 2 wooden swords. From the palm-sized hole they created, flames leaped up. This was earthly fire. They were inside a volcano, and it wasn't dead after all. Meng Hao had checked into this after his cultivation base was restored, and was about 70 to 80% sure of it. You have a furnace and earthly fire, said Meng Hao, his voice low. What else do you need? Chu Yuyan looked at the glowing hole from which red flames spat forth. She felt the heat and looked at the furnace in his hand. She had to admit this place was very suitable for alchemy. I need to recover some of my cultivation base, she said, her eyes flickering. He gazed at her coldly, then lifted his hand. A low-grade spirit stone shot forth to hover before her. Her spirits rose as she snatched it with delicate hands. She clenched her jaw, then split her hand open on an adjacent rock, following his example. Pain paled her face and her body trembled. Gritting her teeth, she shoved the stone into the wound. She sat cross-legged to meditate. About an hour passed, and she opened her eyes. Her cultivation base had recovered to about the 2nd or 3rd level of qi condensation. Give me the pill recipe, she said, standing up. I'll also need a bag of holding. Her skin had recovered along with her cultivation base. It was now lustrous and let off a gentle shine. She looked at Meng Hao. He pulled out a jade slip, which he then placed between his eyebrows. Then he threw it toward Chu Yuyan. Next, he produced a variety of medicinal plants which he handed over. The 7 Thunders pill requires 7 minor pills as its ingredients. This jade slip shows how to make the first of the 7. There are enough materials there to make 2 of them. That's all there is, so you only have 2 chances. If you fail, we have no hope of leaving. He tossed her the pill furnace along with an empty bag of holding. Without another word, he sat down cross-legged next to the cave, his eyes closed in meditation. Chu Yuyan's brow furrowed. She quietly lifted up the pill furnace and placed the medicinal plants into the bag of holding. Next, neared the earthly fire aperture and studied the flames for a bit. Then, she sat down cross-legged and began to analyze the jade slip. Meng Hao's eyes opened a sliver, and he looked at her for a moment before closing them again. The 7 Thunders pill he had asked her to make was, of course, the perfect foundation pill. Only by concocting that pill would he have the hope of attracting heavenly tribulation lightning, and thus the chance to break open the shield. As Chu Yuyan began her alchemy, doubts and suspicions would no doubt begin to well up within her. However, Meng Hao didn't care about this. The perfect foundation pill required the 7 minor pills. Missing even one wouldn't do. However, the minor pills were useless by themselves. They were only effective when combined together. Meng Hao had 2 of the minor pills in his possession, but of course, Chu Yan wouldn't be able to reproduce them. There are a lot of weird things about this place, he thought to himself. I've been able to restore some of my cultivation base. I should go look around, especially at that lake of blood. A moment later, he stood up. Ignoring Chu Yuyan, who was currently studying the Jade slip, he walked forward, disappearing into the mists. Chu Yuyan watched him as he left, then looked back down at the spirit stone stuck into her bloody flesh. A low-grade spirit stone isn't enough to activate my branding. At the very least, I would need a mid-grade spirit stone. Even with that, I wouldn't be completely confident of the results. It's already been more than a month and no one from the sect has arrived, which proves that the shield really can suppress everything. Very well then. I'll concoct the 7 Thunders pill for him. That's the only chance of getting out of here. With a light sigh, she continued to examine the Jade slip. She did so more earnestly than she had ever studied anything with her master back in the sect. 7 days flashed by. Meng Hao hadn't returned to the cave. Instead, he sat cross-legged in a cave he had hollowed out in the rock wall a bit over 300 meters from the shore of the Lake of Blood. In front of him were 10 spring and autumn trees. His face was pale and his body trembled. In his hand was an additional spring and autumn tree. His eyes opened and let out a long sigh. The breath that he exhaled transformed into a 3-colored flower that looked like a demonic face. It grinned ferociously and then slowly disappeared. His gaze swept across the 10 trees in front of him. A moment ago, the poison had begun to flare up, and he had successfully used the spring and autumn tree against it. So, the spring and autumn tree really can suppress the poison in me. He flicked his sleeve, collecting up the rest of the trees. He adjusted his cultivation base and then opened his eyes again and looked at the lake of blood. His eyes filled with determination. This whole place is really bizarre, as if it's been sealed somehow. Furthermore, it has this lake of blood. I've been stuck in here for 2 months, and other than the first time we came here, haven't experienced any real sense of danger. I shouldn't place all my hopes in the perfect foundation pill. I should be prepared in case Chu Yuyan fails to concoct the pill. This is the strangest place in this whole location. In fact, I have the feeling that the reason this place is sealed to begin with has something to do with the lake of blood. He slowly stood up and walked out of the cave. He spit out an arc of electricity which turned into a mist that surrounded him, then began to slowly approach the lake of blood. As soon as he stepped foot within the area 300 meters surrounding the shore, ripples appeared on the calm surface. His eyes glittered, and he took another step. The closer he got, the more ripples appeared. Gradually, roaring sounds echoed out and the dark green stone altar appeared. Waves roiled as it rose out from the surface of the lake, supported on the backs of the countless bloody bodies, whose faces were twisted in agony. The altar rose higher and higher. The throne was there, seated upon which was the corpse wearing a mask. More than half of the altar was visible. Meng Hao stopped and slowly walked backward. He found that as he did so, the altar also stopped rising up and then slowly began to sink down. Very interesting, said Meng Hao, his eyes gleaming. He stopped moving backward and then resolutely strode forward. As he got closer, the men and women supporting the altar began to wail. The altar rose higher and higher. Soon, the entire 150-meter altar had emerged out of the lake. Meng Hao stopped. Looking down, he could see that there was some massive object concealed in the lake. Although it appeared as if the altar was being lifted up by the men and women, in fact, it was really being pushed up by whatever it was that lurked in the depths of the lake. Surrounded by his mist, Meng Hao stood there silently for a moment. Then he walked forward, entering the 30-meter region surrounding the lake. The altar lifted up, and suddenly an enormous head rose up out of the lake of blood. The altar was located the very top it. It was about 300 meters in diameter and was dark green in color. This was not the head of some living creature. It was formed out of rock. By the time Meng Hao reached the shore of the lake of blood, the head was completely visible. Blood poured out of the orifices of the face, which was twisted into a hideous expression. Its mouth opened, and an archaic howling voice could be heard. The ancient Doom clan, the legacy of the blood immortal. Enter my sea of blood. 9 will open in the southern domain. All creation will know. The first person shall acquire the bloodline of the blood immortal. The voice sounded out directly inside of Meng Hao's head, filling it with its echoing roar. This chapter was sponsored by Tjandra Johans, Marilyn Seeley, Rodrigo Ribeiro, Stephanus Hendra, and Hein Hodgeberg. Chapter 117, A Tiny Little Punishment. Only Meng Hao could hear the voice's sound. No one else would sense even a bit of it. Even Chu Yuyan in the volcano couldn't hear it. As the sound filled his head, Meng Hao's eyes filled with an intense look. The ancient Doom clan. Don't tell me we're near the ancient Temple of Doom, the legacy of the blood immortal. An immortal? Meng Hao was shocked. He was familiar with various cultivation levels. After nascent soul was spirit severing, then Tao seeking, and finally immortal ascension. In tens of thousands of years, only 7 or 8 people had ever succeeded in reaching that stage. Even Tao seeking was uncommon. The legacy of the blood immortal. Did that person call himself immortal, or did he actually reach immortal ascension? Though he was excited, he suddenly thought of the battle between Patriarch Reliance and Lord Revelation, and the 2 words uttered, Dawn immortal. His eyes flickered as he looked at the enormous head and its open mouth, beyond which seemed to be a tunnel. Entering would signify the beginning of pursuing the legacy. 9 will open in the southern lands and all creation will know. Could it mean? Once I step in, 9 other entrances will open in the outside world. Then everyone will know. He hesitated, gazing at the mouth, deep in thought. Must be that way. There are 9 entrances where people can enter to seek the legacy. Among them, one will be selected to receive the blood immortal's legacy. So there are 9 places similar to this. If one opens, then all of them open. I just wonder if anyone has opened it before. Suddenly, he looked around at the shores of the lake. They were strewn with ghastly white bones. Many of the bones were skulls and were human. The skulls had marks of wear. Obviously, they had existed here for many years. Perhaps it was because of the strangeness of this place that they hadn't been scattered, but instead remained here all this time. Whatever the case, Meng Hao had no way to determine how long they had been here, nor any way to determine if they were intruders or people sacrificed when this place was created. He thought for a while and eventually decided not to just rashly charge into the mouth entrance. He slowly walked backward. As he did, the giant head slowly sank back into the lake, along with the altar. By the time he reached the 300-meter mark, everything was quiet. As he walked backward, he flicked his sleeve, collecting some of the bones into his bag of holding. Then he stood there, looking at the lake of blood for a while, before turning and leaving. Soon he had returned to Chu Yuyan outside the fisher-like cave. Her face was pale, and she was concentrating on the pill furnace. She took out some medicinal plants, squeezed the juice out of them, and then placed them in the furnace. Meng Hao sat down cross-legged a short distance away. A look of deep thought appeared in his eyes. He took out one of the skulls he had just acquired and examined it closely. If I can't determine the age of these bones, then I can't just casually go after the legacy of the blood immortal. He thought back to everything that had happened in the state of Zhao, which had taught him the value of being cautious. He held up the skull in front of him, looking at it closely. Time slowly passed. Soon, 5 days had gone by. Chu Yuyan walked over to Meng Hao from the pill furnace. Looking exhausted, she tossed him a medicinal pill. It was a deep blue color and was very beautiful in appearance. It emanated a faint bluish glow, but no fragrant aroma. I failed once but succeeded the second time. This is the pill you need. Now give me some clothes. She looked down at him, weariness in her eyes. This was the price to be paid for performing alchemy. Meng Hao took the medicinal pill and examined it closely. He put it into his bag of the cosmos and then retrieved another jade slip along with 2 complete sets of ingredients. He also pulled out a set of garments. He put them all down in front of him, whereupon Chu Yuyan picked them up and walked back into the cave. A while later she emerged, wearing Meng Hao's gown, her long hair spread out over her shoulders. She looked like an elegant young maiden. She was tired, but that actually caused her to emanate a type of good looks different from before. As Meng Hao looked at her, he realized that elder sister Su could not match up with her in terms of beauty. In fact, Chu Yuyan was perhaps the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his entire life. Only the beautiful young women he had seen at the bottom of the North Sea could come even close. Now that she had changed clothes and covered up some of her nakedness, Chu Yuyan no longer looked so uneasy standing in front of Meng Hao. As she walked out, she caught sight of the skull that he had been examining. Her eyes suddenly gleamed with a strange light, which almost immediately disappeared. "If you have nothing better to do," she said coldly, "you could go stand watch by the shield. Maybe some cultivators will pass by that could save us. That would be better than sitting around looking at an ancient skull." "How many tens of thousands of years have these skulls been here?" he asked suddenly. She gave a cold laugh. It seemed changing clothes had restored her previous arrogance. Apparently, she assumed that since she was concocting pills that Meng Hao needed, he wouldn't dare to treat her the way he had in the past. Ignoring him, she walked back to her alchemic work area. Meng Hao laughed and slapped his bag of holding. A wooden sword appeared which shot directly toward her. It was fast and reached her in an instant. Given the state of her cultivation base, she had no way to evade, nor did she try. She looked back at Meng Hao arrogantly, a sneer in her eyes. The tip of the sword was already at her neck. A grim, cold air emanated from her body, but her chin was lifted as high as ever, her eyes filled with mocking. "You have 3 seconds to take your sword away," she said coolly. "If you don't, or if you harm me, then you won't have anyone to concoct pills for you." Her skin was white like snow, her head tilted arrogantly. Her eyes glittered like eyes as she stared at Meng Hao with disgust. She was convinced that Meng Hao wouldn't dare to make a move against her. The sword was simply a threat, and to Chu Yuyan, such threats were infantile and laughable. She was the type of person who could not tolerate being wronged. Now that she had successfully created one of the pills, she could hold her head high and make Meng Hao think twice before trifling with her. She might even be able to get the upper hand. "You're right," said Meng Hao, frowning. "Without you, I would have no way to concoct pills." From the look of things, it seemed he really couldn't do anything to her. However, he knew that this flame of rebellion must be snuffed out lest it grow even more troublesome. He thought for a while, then suddenly smiled. When Chu Yuyan saw his smile, her heart began to thump inexplicably, and suddenly she didn't feel the least bit at ease. "In fact," he said coolly, "if I offend you in any way, considering that you are the disciple of Grandmaster Pill Demon, you could easily make the pills incorrectly, or perhaps slip something fatal into them." His tone was leisurely and the look on his face enigmatic. Chu Yuyan felt even more uncomfortable. She had, of course, thought of doing just as he said. Killing Meng Hao ahead of time wouldn't influence the lightning. But now he had spoken out her very thoughts. She didn't know what he was planning, but she still felt that her alchemy would prevent him from harming her in. She gave a cold harumph. "What are you talking about?" she said coldly. It really felt to her as if his smile was amiss. "The way that I, Meng, handle things is as such. If people don't offend me, I don't offend them. I promise to see you out of here and I will not go back on my word. But don't get arrogant because of your alchemy. Do not try to gain the upper hand." The wooden sword suddenly flew back toward him, leaving behind a tiny nick on Chu Yuyan's throat. She opened her mouth reflexively, and as she did so, Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding. A pink-colored medicinal pill appeared, which shot forward directly into her mouth. It dissolved as soon as it entered. Chu Yuyan retreated backwards, her expression filled with shock. She wanted to spit the pill out, but couldn't. "What pill did you just give me?" she said, glaring at Meng Hao. "You used a special technique as a facade to try to absorb my cultivation base," said Meng Hao coolly. "We still haven't settled accounts over that. Think of this pill as a little punishment." He then closed his eyes and ignored her. Such behavior on his part only served to make Chu Yuyan more perturbed. Her skill in alchemy was exceptional, but she really had no idea what pill she had just consumed. She gritted her beautiful teeth. Suddenly, hot steam began to accumulate within her. It quickly filled her, causing alarm to appear on her face. She immediately sat down cross-legged in meditation, attempting to suppress it. But her cultivation base was reduced to almost nothing. Currently, she could only utilize the power of the 3rd level of qi condensation. How could that possibly be enough to diffuse the pill? She sat in meditation for the time it takes an incense stick to burn. A roaring filled her head, and she began to lose the ability to even think. Then, she slipped into a deep hallucination. It was at this time that Meng Hao opened his eyes. They were calm, not the least bit agitated. The pill from just now had been acquired in the mountainous valley area, when the toad geezer had given him a variety of poison pills as tribute. He originally had never intended to give it to Chu Yuyan, but she had really been asking for trouble. Her arrogance had flared with her successful concoction of the pill. He had no choice but to wipe out that bluster. In order to reduce her haughtiness, Meng Hao had chosen to give her the pill. His eyes were clear and bright, his mind made up. After descending into this volcano, he had placed Chu Yuyan under his complete control. She had no room to maneuver. Her stubbornness and arrogance surfaced on multiple occasions, even down to today. And yet, she was still unable to free herself from Meng Hao's control. Chapter 118. Without entering Mount Heaven, immortal ascension is impossible. Meng Hao looked calmly at Chu Yuyan and took a few steps back. He had studied Confucianism and Taoism at a young age. Despite incredible changes, those teachings still existed in his heart. He wasn't incapable of taking advantage of someone in trouble, but he had a moral bottom line. He wouldn't touch Chu Yuyan. She was his enemy, not his friend. Punishing her was one thing, but such depravity would go against his being. He might not be a complete gentleman, but he wasn't a depraved scumbag. Everyone has a bottom line. To Meng Hao, it was about principles and morality. He thought again about the perfect foundation pill. He settled his chi and calmed his mind, then stepped onto a flying sword and flew up into the air. Enough time passed for an incense stick to burn. Everything around Chu Yuyan was quiet. She was finally unconscious, her aura feeble, as if she were suffering from some serious illness. Meng Hao returned. When he landed onto the ground, he looked at Chu Yuyan and let out a soft sigh. Producing another set of clothing from his bag of the cosmos, he covered her and then sat down cross-legged nearby. Time slowly passed. 4 hours went by before Chu Yuyan's eyes opened. As soon as they did, they filled with confusion. Then they flashed as she seemed to remember something. She sat there silently. Didn't yell or flip out. She silently walked into the cave. Some time passed and she came back out, her clothes back in order. Her face was pale and she looked very weak and tired. She gave Meng Hao a look filled with complexity. She hadn't lost her memory. She very clearly remembered everything, including Meng Hao flying off. Meng Hao's eyes opened and he gave her a level look. "I did nothing to harm you," he said slowly. "That pill was punishment for your attempt to harm my cultivation base. You need to understand the truth here. My instructions are everything." There was no arrogance left in Chu Yuyan. Her feelings regarding Meng Hao were incredibly complex. Yes, she hated him, but under the circumstances just now, he had chosen to leave rather than touch her. Chu Yuyan didn't want to, but she actually felt appreciation mixed together with her hatred. The complex feelings within her felt like floodwaters threatening to submerge her. She didn't know how many similar medicinal pills Meng Hao had, but from his actions, she could guess that even though the pill she was concocting was important to him, he wasn't worried about her trying to poison him by adding or changing the recipe. "The pill formula he gave me is very strange. Because of the interactions between the various ingredients, to change the formula ratios is simply beyond my ability. I wouldn't be able to produce a complete pill. However, even if I did successfully adjust the formula, given this guy's personality, it's possible he might make me consume it. Actually, it's impossible at all to tell if he will even consume it himself. Maybe he'll catch a viper and force it to consume it. In fact, it's even possible that the pill doesn't need to be consumed. Maybe he'll use some other method to melt it and provoke the lightning. Maybe that's why he doesn't care." She frowned. It was really impossible to figure out the answer, and she had no idea what to do. She looked at Meng Hao, her expression torn. The more she thought about him and the deepness of his schemes, the more frightened she became. "Compared to him, Wang Tengfei really is inferior," she sighed. After thinking for a moment, she took a deep breath and said, "That skull has been here for several tens of thousands of years. Actually, I know where we are and I know what this place is. When I saw the altar in the Lake of Blood, I started to suspect. I've thought about it a lot since then and finally realized where we are." Her voice soft, she continued, "This is one of the 2 undiscovered locations of the legacy of the Blood Immortal. In total, there are 9. From ancient times until now, 7 have appeared. This means there have been a total of 7 chances throughout history to acquire the legacy. Whenever a new location appears, it sets the entire southern domain abuzz. There are rules governing this place. Only Foundation establishment cultivators can enter. Any who does has a chance at acquiring the legacy. Every time the tournament begins, the previously discovered legacy zones will emit a glow of blood that lasts for 9 days. After 9 days have passed, whoever is the first person to enter into the red glow, as long as they meet the requirement of having a cultivation base at the Foundation establishment stage, will be transported to the Blood Immortals Mountain. When the legacy tournament begins, it will last for a maximum of 9 months. Only one person is permitted into each legacy zone. From tens of thousands of years ago when the first Blood Immortal legacy zone appeared, all the way until now, there have been 7. This means that there have been 7 legacy tournaments. Some people have had the luck to acquire various rewards, but down to this day, no one has succeeded in acquiring the true legacy. Of the 9 total legacy zones, there are 2 remaining. Throughout all these years, no one has discovered their location. Therefore, there has been no way to begin the 8th legacy tournament. As he heard all of these things, Meng Hao's eyes began to narrow. "Who is the Blood Immortal?" he asked. "I refuse to believe you didn't go yourself to examine the Lake of Blood," she said calmly. "And I also refuse to believe you are unaware that underneath the surface of the lake is a massive head with an open mouth. The 7 other Blood Immortal legacy zones throughout the world all have lakes of blood and altars. Underneath each altar is a mouth. Furthermore, I refuse to believe you didn't hear the voice of the legacy. I have no proof, but my intuition tells me that you've been there, and you know. You're a cautious person, so you didn't dare to step foot inside without first bringing back those skulls to analyze, to see if you could determine their age. You didn't answer my question." The ancient Temple of Doom. It was once a holy place for the ancient Doom clan. They were not looked upon with favor by the heavens and were punished with tribulation. There were 3 famous immortals amongst them whose names were passed down through the generations after. One of them was the Blood Immortal. Anyone who acquires his legacy will be qualified to fight on the path to immortality and step foot onto the immortality pillar. Chu Yuyan's voice was soft as she spoke. She continued. The path to immortality is an arduous one. According to the ancient legends, it can be found only on Mount Heaven. It is not a mountain on the earth, but in the sky. On its peak is an immortality pillar. By stepping onto the pillar and knocking on the door of South Heaven, an immortal realm shall be opened. You shall be bathed in the light of immortality. Step into the void and into immortal ascension. Since ancient times, countless heroes have fought over the ability to tread the path to immortal ascension. After all, if you analyze the character immortal Chinese letter, you will find that it is composed of the character person and the character mountain Chinese letter. That mountain is Mount Heaven and the person is only one person. Every 10,000 years, one person achieves immortal ascension. However, there is another understanding regarding the character immortal Chinese letter. According to this understanding, first is the character enter Chinese letter. Then is the character mountain Chinese letter. Combined, they mean immortal. It is a simple truth. Without entering Mount Heaven, one cannot achieve immortal ascension. She looked at Meng Hao, explaining things that were only known to members of the 5 great sects and 3 great clans in the southern domain. What is immortality? A person and a mountain. What is immortality? Entering the mountain. In 10,000 years, one person entered the mountain. One person achieved immortal ascension. Meng Hao's eyes began to shine brightly, but then, just as quickly, the glow faded. Considering that he was just a foundation establishment cultivator, immortal ascension was far, far away for him. For him to think about it now was really just too extravagant. It was basically a daydream. Before the path to immortality are the Tao-seeking stones, which only exist in the 3 danger zones. Tao-seeking is difficult, but before that is spirit severing and its 3 severings. Each severings requires enlightenment and gives life. To be honest, I don't really know what all of this means. But when I was young, my father would speak these words to me and tell me to place them within my heart and never forget them for the rest of my life. Chu Yuyan played with her hair, no longer looking at Meng Hao. She walked back to the pill furnace and slowly sat down. Taking out the jade slip with the information about the pill formula, she closed her eyes and began to analyze it. Everything grew quiet. Meng Hao looked at Chu Yuyan. She was different now. Her words continued to echo in his heart, and he analyzed them bit by bit. Based on the look on her face, as well as his own speculations regarding the legacy of the blood immortal, he was now 70 to 80% sure that what she had said was the truth. After some time passed, he spoke. "Why did you give me so much detailed information?" "Because," she said softly, looking at him, "I hope that you will go after the blood immortal's legacy and then die inside. Then I can finally be rid of you. Many things have happened that shouldn't have." Having said this, she closed her eyes and continued to seek enlightenment regarding the pill formula. Meng Hao suddenly laughed. He didn't mind hearing her words. If she hadn't spoken just now, then he would have grown suspicious. After all this time spent with Chu Yuyan, he was starting to understand her personality much better. The legacy of the blood immortal. I wonder if I should go in after it, he thought, his eyes flickering. It would be impossible for him to not be a bit tempted. A legacy which could send waves throughout the entire southern domain. Anything related to the word immortal would drive cultivators crazy. Chapter 119. The legacy shocks the southern domain. This tournament must surely involve dangers I can't imagine. If careless, I'll fail and die. But great risk brings great reward. Riskier situations show more chance for reward. If there's danger here, I'll regret not going for the rest of my life. Determination filled his eyes as he thought over what Chu Yuyan had told him. However, after some time, he hadn't come up with new ideas about why she had told him so much. She was provoking me. Maybe her goal was to get me to go in, or perhaps not. The chances of the latter are small. Perhaps she hopes entering and starting the tournament will attract the outside world's attention, giving the Violet Fate sect a better chance to track her. His eyes flashed. If I don't go, nothing happens. But if that's what she wanted, why would she detail it now, especially in a way that makes me hesitant? What is she thinking? What's her true goal? His eyes flickered as he thought. Finally, he closed his eyes and began to meditate. Time passed slowly. Soon, half a month had gone by. Chu Yuyan finally concocted the 2nd pill, but after another month her attempts at the 3rd and 4th pills had failed. Meng Hao couldn't perform alchemy, but it was clear she wasn't failing intentionally. The pill concoction was becoming more difficult. Throughout the month, Meng Hao didn't think about the legacy of the blood immortal. He seemed to have put it out of mind. One day he stood up and hopped onto a flying sword, shooting up through the mists to observe the shield. In the past half-month, he'd made a practice of going up every 10 days or so to observe it. Every time he left, Chu Yuyan observed his departure expressionlessly. This time after Meng Hao left, she waited about 4 hours, then suddenly lifted her head, her eyes flashing. She frowned as if having a problem with the pill concoction. Then she stood up, looking off into the mists. Shortly after, she began walking toward the lake of blood. When she got there, she looked around, then returned to the furnace. It seemed whatever question was in her mind had been answered. She continued with her alchemy. Another half-month passed. Finally, she was able to successfully concoct the third and fourth pills. She then began working on the fifth pill. As far as Meng Hao was concerned, this was the last pill. Once it was finished, then all 7 of the minor pills would be ready. More time slipped by. In a blink, 2 months were gone. Meng Hao and Chu Yuyan had now been trapped in the volcano for half a year. Within those 2 months, Chu Yuyan would occasionally leave the cave area. Sometimes when Meng Hao was watching, sometimes when he was away. It seemed whenever she had a problem with the formula, she would pace about. But she never entered the region within 300 meters of the Lake of Blood, always stopping at that mark. Finally one day, under Meng Hao's watchful eyes, she stood up. Frowning, she walked into the mists. When she reached the 300-meter mark, her eyes flashed. Suddenly, the power of her cultivation base flared up, and she sped toward the Lake of Blood at top speed. As she neared it, the surface of the lake began to ripple. The altar appeared, followed by the enormous stone head. The mouth gaped, a passageway awaiting for the legacy tournament participant to enter. Chu Yuyan's eyes flickered with excitement as she raced forward. She was almost leaping into the air by the time she reached the mouth. Just as she was about to enter, a light laugh filled the air. A sword aura flickered, shooting toward Chu Yuyan. As soon as she heard the laughter, her face went pale. Ignoring the approach of the wooden sword, she gritted her straight, white teeth and charged forward. There was only 2 meters between her and the large stone mouth. Suddenly, a black net appeared, moving at a speed much faster than Chu Yuyan. It immediately enveloped her, and she was not able to move beyond that last 2 meters. The wooden sword scooped her and tossed her back to the lake shore. Standing nearby within the mists was Meng Hao. His face expressionless, he slowly walked forward. Chu Yuyan's face was pale, and her eyes flashed with venomous hatred as she glared at Meng Hao. The instant he had brought back that skull to study, she had put all the pieces together regarding the legacy of the blood immortal. Furthermore, everything she had said those months ago was true. She thought she knew Meng Hao and understood his innate skepticism. She intentionally tried to make him think that there was something suspicious going on. Given his nature, he would certainly suspect her. Based on all of this, she knew that he would not easily be convinced to act. That would give her time. In the following months, she had made it a practice to go for walks. She did this so that Meng Hao would not find it unusual. Today, she had finally made her attempt, never having imagined that she would fail. "You really are quite patient," said Meng Hao. "I gave you a whole 3 months. At the moment he was disinclined to explain to her how he had seen through her plan. "You have 1 month. I want to see the 5th pill. Now get back to your alchemy." He made a snatching motion with his hand, retrieving the large net. Chu Yuyan bit her lip and got to her feet. Without another glance at Meng Hao, she made a bitter departure. So she really did want to go in. Meng Hao looked thoughtfully over his shoulder at Chu Yuyan's departing figure. A cold smile lifted the corners of his mouth. Now, his doubts were dispelled. He walked forward and entered the mouth of the enormous statue. The instant he entered the mouth, he disappeared, and the lake of blood began to seethe. A roaring sound rippled out, and the lake of blood transformed into a blood-colored mist, which dispersed in all directions. An archaic voice echoed out from within the blood mist, resounding out from within the volcano. "The ancient Doom clan, the legacy of the blood immortal. Enter my sea of blood. 9 will open in the southern domain. All creation will know. The first person shall acquire the bloodline of the blood immortal." When it hit Chu Yuyan's ears, she staggered and her face grew pale. She gnawed on her lip as a look of extreme bitterness filled her face. "If only I had realized earlier what this place was," she shook her head. Her face was pallid. Her hatred toward Meng Hao and toward fate itself filled her with complicated emotions. Meanwhile, outside in the southern domain, there were 7 different locations, out from all of which suddenly could be heard a massive roaring. As soon as the sound raged out, the sky above the entire southern domain turned the color of blood. From each of the 7 locations, an archaic voice rumbled out. The ancient Doom clan, the legacy of the blood immortal. Enter my sea of blood. 9 will open in the southern domain. All creation will know. The first person shall acquire the bloodline of the blood immortal. The echoing sound immediately sent the southern domain stirring. Regardless of their sect or background, any cultivators near the 7 blood immortal legacy zones looked on in astonishment. They immediately shot off in various directions at incredible speed. The blood immortal legacy zones have reappeared. The 8th blood immortal legacy zone has been discovered. Now that it's been entered, the other 7 legacy zones have opened. The 8th blood immortal legacy tournament is about to begin. There will only be 9 total chances to get the blood immortal legacy. Over the past tens of thousands of years, it has happened 7 times. This is the 8th time. If no one acquires the legacy this time, who knows how many years will pass before the 9th tournament arrives. The other 7 locations were places where previous blood immortal legacy tournaments had begun. Whenever a new location appeared, it would cause a huge sensation in the southern domain. The eyes of countless cultivators grew red with desire. Although no one had ever acquired the legacy itself, in every race, lucky participants emerged with various magical items and techniques. As the news spread, the 5 great sects and 3 great clans were the first to react. After them, other clans followed in taking action. At the moment the roaring sound rippled out, and the words of the archaic voice echoed loudly. The entire southern domain buzzed with action. The Wang clan, one of the 3 great clans, was one of the first to act. Several hundred beams of light flew out, followed by several enormous flying battleships filled with the disciples of the Wang clan. They made their way toward the nearest blood immortal legacy zone. White-robed Wang Tengfei stood on the second boat in the procession. His hands were clasped behind his back as he stared coldly at someone on the ship ahead in the lead position. There stood a man wearing a similar white robe. He closely resembled Wang Tengfei, although he looked a little bit older. He frowned in thought. This was Wang Lihai I. Wang Lihai's name in Chinese is Chinese letter, Wang Lihai. Wang is a common family name. Li means experience. Hai means ocean, Wang Tengfei's older brother. He was a Dao child of the Wang clan, which was a position higher than that held by a trifling chosen. He was in the late foundation establishment stage and could achieve core formation at almost any time. He was surrounded by various elite members of the Wang clan, including his Dao protector, a nascent Soul clan uncle. As for Wang Tengfei, he stood there silently, hands clasped rigidly behind his back. One of the fingers of his right hand looked very different from the others. It was as transparent as crystal, within which circulated tiny black spiraling threads. It looked extremely bizarre. 2. If you forgot how Wang Tengfei lost his finger, please reread chapter 32. This finger brought me humiliation today, I cripple it. Standing next to him was Wang Zifen, the man who had almost killed Meng Hao with a single look that day, years ago. 3. If you forgot how Wang Zifen almost killed Meng Hao, please reread chapter 35. I'm not willing. Also the same chapter where we meet our favorite sexy female antagonist, Chu Yuyan. If things hadn't happened the way they did in the state of Zhao, he said coolly, you wouldn't be at the early foundation establishment stage right now. You would be at the middle stage. You would still be behind your brother, but not as far as you are now. I will exceed my brother, said Wang Tengfei calmly. I will become a Dao child. There will only be one chance to acquire the legacy of the blood immortal, said Wang Zifen, his eyes flashing. He frowned. It's too bad there hasn't been any word from the Violet Fate sect about Yuyan. Apparently, she's in a critical stage of secluded meditation. Otherwise, she would be able to provide you with some assistance. Chapter 120. The 5 sects and 3 clans of the Southern Domain. Meanwhile in the Goldfrost sect, one of the 5 great sects, hundreds of beams of light shot whistling up into the sky. These were sect members who didn't need magical flight items. The person in the lead ripped open a hole in the air through which the others entered. Zhao Shanling 1. Zhao Shanling, Zhou Yanyan, Chen Fan and Su Qing are mentioned in Chapter 41, a sensation in the state of Zhao, and Chapter 42, who dares to touch him, was amongst them, carrying a gold greatsword and clad in armor. He moved with incredible speed. Legacy of the Blood Immortal sent the great sects and clans into a frenzy. In addition to the Wang clan and the Goldfrost sect was the Song clan. Several hundred cultivators emerged, all outstanding talents. Amongst them was eccentric Song, whose treasures Meng Hao had stolen in the state of Zhao. The most powerful sect was the Solitary Sword sect. Hundreds of sword auras shot up in a shocking sight. Every cultivator stood on a sword. The auras seemed as if they could split open the sky. At the front were 7 people with stern looks. One was none other than Chen Fan. Chen Fan's face was filled with righteousness. He wore a long white robe and stood on a dark green sword. His cultivation base billowed out at the early foundation establishment stage. In front of the 7 was a middle-aged man with a cold expression and fierce killing intent. This was none other than Zhou Yanyan, Chen Fan's master. Wind whipped the clouds into turmoil above the southern domain as Wu Dinkyu II. Wu Dinkyu and Eccentric Song are mentioned in Chapter 48. Eccentric Song and Wu Dinkyu and the few chapters after that of the Violet Fate sect shot through the air with hundreds of disciples. As they flew, Wu Dinkyu's brow was furrowed, thinking about something very important. This caused the others from the sect to be incredibly quiet. Yuyan is missing, he thought. She was seen chasing after some cultivator. Then that rock flew through, kicking up a whirlwind. Where is she? Her life slip is still intact, so she's safe. He sighed. Chu Yuyan was very important to the sect. In fact, many people had opposed her engagement to Wang Tengfei. Beams of prismatic light could be seen in the sky all over the southern domain, flying toward the 7 blood immortal legacy zones. Amongst the great sects and clans, the Li clan was the most secretive. They rarely sent clan members out into the world, and when they did, few people were aware of it. In fact, when the blood immortal legacy zones opened, they only sent out 5 people. Of those 5 people, 2 were old Dao protectors of the nascent soul stage. The rest were at the foundation establishment stage, 2 men and 1 woman. These 3 were chosen of the Li clan, whom few outsiders had even heard of. Years ago, the patriarch revealed the secret that the 8 blood immortal legacy tournament would fall into the hands of the Li clan, said one of the old men. He wore a long black robe and was tall and emaciated. He looked back at the 3 behind him. The 8th tournament has arrived. Dai, the legacy belongs to you, this is certain. As for you 2, just observe and take the opportunity to learn something. The most mysterious of the 5 great sects was the Blood Demon sect. They sent even fewer people than the Li clan, only 2. One was old, one was young. The young man wore a scarlet robe and appeared to be about 16 or 17. He emanated a fierce killing aura. Located between his eyebrows was a mark of blood, which would occasionally let out a glow that covered half of his face. Beneath his feet was a mist of blood, within which could be seen countless fierce faces that appeared to be howling. This young man looked anything but ordinary. If Meng Hao were there, or perhaps Fatty or Little Tiger, they would instantly recognize him. The young man looked exactly like Wang Yaoke III. For Wang Yaoke, check out Chapter 1. Scholar Meng Hao, Chapter 19. The Wind Stirs Again in Chapter 72. A true man, the relevant part in this chapter is only one line in the middle but relatively important. From 6 or 7 years ago. If it really was him, then it would mean he hadn't changed at all over the years. Very strange. Of the 5 great sects of the southern domain, 4 sprang into action. Only the Black Civ sect did not. In the main hall of the sect, 6 people sat cross-legged, their bodies concealed in shadows. Within the hall, everything was silent. An archaic, sinister voice suddenly rang out. So, the time has come for the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament. Should we dispatch some people? The legacy of the Blood Immortal might be powerful, but no one has acquired it even after tens of thousands of years. Comparatively speaking, the ancient map we discovered is much more important. We can't conceal the matter, though, so we won't. That will cause more chaos, which will serve to our advantage. If we succeed in our endeavor, the entire structure of the southern domain will be changed. As for the item, the Tao of the Black Civ sect will be refined, which is luck for the sect. I agree that we should not dispatch anyone to the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament. We've studied this ancient map for a long time. Even the patriarchs view it with high importance and have studied it several times. We can take advantage of the suspicion which will arise from our lack of participation in the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament. We can guide more people here, whereupon their curiosity will increase. Then, we can begin the next phase of our plan. Outside of the Black Civ sect's main temple hall, several hundred solemn-faced disciples had gathered. They had been called here to wait for orders from the sect elders. Standing off to the side was Su Qing. She wore a standard white robe. Her face seemed thinner than before and her frame somewhat frail. Though always cold, she didn't seem very happy in the Black Civ sect. Her cultivation base was only at the 9th level of qi condensation. A charming young woman appeared next to her. Her voice low, she said, "Junior sister Su, elder brother Chen said to give you one last chance. If you agree to what he wants, he'll fight to get you a foundation establishment pill. Don't be stupid. If you provoke him, then." In the midst of her advice, Su Qing raised her head and looked at her coldly. "You don't need to bring up this matter again, elder sister Zhu. Please, have some self-respect." The girl surnamed Zhu sneered. You're just an uncivilized biddy from a backwater nation. You try to act high and mighty, but you're really an idiot. Elder brother Chen taking a liking to you is good luck for you. This matter is beyond your control. Su Qing didn't say anything. However, her delicate hands clenched tightly within her sleeves until they turned pale white. The Zhu girl laughed coldly and continued to deride her. And as for that cosmetic enhancement pill, concocted in some crude, tiny sect on some crappy mountain, elder sister Han wanted to trade you for it to give to her servant girl, but you refused. You really have a one-track mind. What a waste of your good looks. Su Qing's face was pale white, and she gnawed on her lower lip, but she said nothing. Eventually, an old man wearing a dark green robe emerged from the main temple hall. He flicked his sleeve, and mist began to billow out. An enormous feng shui compass flew down from the sky. The Zhu girl stopped her ridicule and hopped up onto it, along with the surrounding disciples, including Su Qing. Under the control of the old man, the feng shui compass carried them off into the distance. Wind and clouds roiled above the southern domain. Because the Black Civ sect didn't participate, the 7 blood immortal legacy zones were each occupied by one of the other 4 sects, or one of the 3 clans. Other could only yield to their approach. However, despite their high position, the great clans and sects could not force outsiders to leave. That would have raised public indignation. They simply cleared a way through to wait for the glow of blood to appear and the legacy tournament to begin. Time passed by. A few days later, the blood immortals' sacrificial altars began to thrum. Everything began to shake, and finally, a bloody screen appeared. Within the blood screen, a gateway slowly came to be visible. In this instant, all the Foundation establishment cultivators at the 7 blood immortal sacrificial altars felt the desire to surge forward. However, the gateway would only permit one person to enter. That right went to the first person who made it through. Only if that person died or intentionally emerged to rest could a second person enter. It was a vast world, with blue skies and white clouds. There was a feeling of purity, difficult to describe, which appeared in the hearts of everyone who entered. Looking up, the sky was filled with an enormous sacrificial altar, dark green in color. At the top of the altar, sitting on an enormous stone throne, was a person. It was a corpse clothed in a blood-colored robe. On its face was a featureless silver mask. It sat there unmoving. The altar seemed to fill nearly half the sky of this world. All of the people who entered were able to see the person on top. The legacy of the blood immortal. There was no need to say it. This person was the deceased blood immortal. Beneath the dark green sacrificial altar were 9 enormous spell matrices. Each spell matrix seemed to be filled with a whirlpool of slowly rotating stars. The 9 spell matrices were like 9 gigantic steps leading up through the white clouds to the sacrificial altar. Anyone who could pass through the 9th spell matrix would then be able to step foot onto the dark green sacrificial altar. However, since ancient times, no one had ever been able to do so. At the moment, Meng Hao stood silently outside the first spell matrix, his eyes glittering. Suddenly, 7 indistinct figures appeared around him. He couldn't tell whether these people were men or women, nor could he determine their age. Even their clothes were unclear. Their entire forms were indistinct blurs. However, Meng Hao was able to see that all of them were looking around at each other. Suddenly, an archaic, emotionless voice rang out. The legacy of the blood immortal, the 9 matrices are opened. 8 legacy competitors have arrived, but only one can acquire the legacy of the blood immortal. The 8 of you will not be able to hear each other speak, nor will you be able to see the magic each other uses. You will be unable to attack each other. You will only be able to see these indistinct blurs. This is because the 8 of you are all in different locations. However, there is one thing in common about your locations. They all contain the same dark green sacrificial altar and the same spiritual energy. The legacy tournament will be open for 9 months. At every matrix, you will have the option to depart. Anytime during the 9 months, you may choose to continue on to the next matrix. You may use any method you wish, including trickery or special sect or clan powers. The first person to break into the 9th matrix will be the 2nd generation blood immortal. There are no rules here. Now, each of you must produce a drop of blood filled with your essence. It will magically transform into a blood divinity. There are countless types of blood divinity. As for which one your blood will create, that will be dependent on luck and fate. Do not forget, absorbing spiritual energy will cause your blood divinity to grow more powerful. This is because your blood divinity is a key factor in whether or not you acquire the legacy. And now, let the 8th blood immortal legacy tournament begin. As soon as the voice finished speaking, 8 dark green beams of light shot out from the altar and flew down toward Meng Hao and the others. This chapter was sponsored by Kok Yen Liang, Ko Chun Wang, and Jonathan Aloof. Chapter 121, Meng Hao's Blood Divinity. Meng Hao's heart pounded. As soon as he stepped into the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, his cultivation base was completely restored, no longer stuck at the 7th level of Qi condensation, but back at the early foundation establishment stage. After hearing the words spoken by the archaic voice, Meng Hao knew why Chu Yuyan had wanted to enter this place. This place can recover your cultivation base. If it stays that way after leaving, then that was obviously Chu Yuyan's first goal. Furthermore, there must be some tricky ways that she could alert people on the outside as to her identity, and then figure out a way to lead them to the volcano. His eyes flashed as he looked at the dark green beam of light in front of him. The dark green light was formless and blurry, as if life were brewing inside. The other 7 blurry figures around him seemed to be similarly studying the dark green lights. Soon, one of the figures spit out a mouthful of blood, which was absorbed by the green light. The light turned the color of blood, and then the cry of a phoenix sounded out from within. The clear sound filled the area as a miniature, finger-sized blood phoenix flew out and circled around. When the blood phoenix emerged, the cultivators surrounding the 7 blood immortal legacy zones throughout the southern domain were instantly shocked. On the blood screen above each of the 7 locations, images appeared of Meng Hao and the 8 others inside the Blood Immortal world. The Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament was very unique. Outsiders were able to observe what was going on inside. When the competitors charged into the spell matrices, people observing would be able to see it clearly. Although they couldn't make out all the details, they would be able to see who succeeded and who didn't. Anyone with skill would also be able to observe the skill matrices and learn from them. Everyone heard the archaic voice say that there were no rules. No matter the method used, the first person to pass the 9th spell matrix would be the 2nd generation Blood Immortal. A legacy tournament with no rules. In some ways, this revealed the arrogance and power of the Blood Immortal. Any cultivator in the world could observe and study the 9 matrices, and yet despite that, in tens of thousands of years and 7 tournaments, no one had ever successfully passed the 9th matrix. Anyone who had managed to enter it had died. Because of the open nature of the legacy tournament, anyone who participated came with ample preparations. Many of the people who watched on the outside had heard various rumors about the legacy of the Blood Immortal. This was why when the Blood Phoenix emerged, many people were surprised. A Blood Phoenix. Among the blood divinities, the Blood Phoenix and Blood Dragon grow very quickly. I recall reading in ancient records about the 6th legacy tournament, when a Blood Phoenix reached the power of a nascent soul eccentric. I wonder which sect's disciple it was who got so lucky this time. A buzz of conversation arose around the 7 legacy tournament zones. Near the 5th zone, eccentric Song of the Song Clang stood there looking pleased. He said nothing, but based on tiny clues he'd spotted, he knew that the person who had acquired the Blood Phoenix was his fellow clan member Songjia. 1. Songjia's name in Chinese is Chinese letter. Songjia. Song is a family name. Jia means excellent. Excellent, he thought. Maybe there really will be a chance for that Songjia girl to acquire the legacy. His eyes shined with anticipation. Meanwhile, inside the legacy zone, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th competitors spit heart's blood into the dark green beams, each receiving different blood divinities. One was a majestic blood-red deer. The 2nd was a blood tiger which roared when it appeared, but these 2 paled to the 3rd, a blood dragon. Its appearance was fierce, and its howls shook the entire area. A commotion instantly broke out in the outside world. A blood dragon. 4,000 years ago, in the 7th Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, a chosen from the Li clan acquired a blood dragon. He was the first person from time immemorial to pass the 8th matrix. Outside of the legacy zone, the 2 old members of the Li clan stood there with expressionless faces. The appearance of the blood dragon was not surprising to them at all. The person who had acquired it was none other than one of the Li clan's chosen of the current generation, Li Dai. 2. Li Dai's name in Chinese is Chinese letter, Li Daoyi. Li is a common family name. Dao is the same character as in the Dao and means way or path. Yi means one. Before the roaring ceased, the 5th, 6th, and 7th blood deities appeared. A Xuanwu turtle, a blood wolf, and shockingly, a tiny blood-colored sprite. The blood-colored sprite looked similar to the nascent soul of a cultivator. Its appearance sent the cultivators in the outside world reeling in shock. Even the 2 old members of the Li clan looked amazed. Every member of every clan and sect that was present were mind-blown. Since ancient times, there has never been a human-shaped blood divinity, not in any of the 7 tournaments. It's hard to say what this blood divinity will grow into. It's never been seen before. Who knows if it can measure up to the blood phoenix and blood dragon? As the buzz of conversation filled the air, the elder from the most mysterious of the 5 great sects, the blood demon sect, sat cross-legged looking at the scene on the blood screen. His eyes were fixed on the blurry figure which had acquired the blood-colored sprite. A moment passed, and he nodded. He knew that this person was none other than his sect's disciple. Meng Hao studied the 7 others and their blood divinities, all extraordinary. These must be various chosen from the southern domain. He glittered his eyes and pushed down on his chest. His cultivation base shuddered, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The blood was from his cultivation base, and it was instantly sucked in by the dark green glow. At the moment, it was not just he who was concentrating on the result. The other 7 people were watching, as well as everyone in the outside world. There was no more buzz of conversation outside. Everyone watched Meng Hao on the giant screen. The black glow immediately turned the color of blood, whereupon a faint but powerful cry rang out from within. As soon as they heard the sound, the 7 people, as well as the tiny deer-shaped blood divinity, all began to tremble. Next, the blood wolf, the Xuanwu turtle, and the blood tiger all seemed as if they couldn't take the sound and began to shake. The blood dragon and blood phoenix both began to emit looks of hostility, glaring toward Meng Hao. Only the blood-colored sprite looked on expressionlessly, not even moving. What will emerge for this person? It's a tiny little roar, but the blood divinities all seem shaken. Even the blood dragon and blood phoenix appear hostile. Could it be another blood divinity that has never before appeared? A roar filled the air as the bloody glow rippled. His blood divinity appeared, a tiny puppy with glistening eyes, the size of a finger. 3. If you're interested in the roles of dogs in Chinese mythology, you can check out this article. The puppy looked ordinary, yet as soon as it appeared, hostility from the blood phoenix and blood dragon intensified. A dog? Never appeared before. I've never heard of such a thing. From the first Blood Immortal Legacy tournament until now, there has never been a blood divinity which was a dog. Laughter rose around the 7 legacy zones. Inside, everything was quiet. Meng Hao looked at the puppy, then at the other blood divinities, his brow furrowed. He lifted his right hand, and the puppy jumped onto his palm, shivering and frightened. It looked up at Meng Hao with adulation, then licked his palm with its tiny tongue. At the same time, the 7 people stepped forward almost at exactly the same time, disappearing into the first spell matrix. Meng Hao's eyes flashed. He didn't really know much about this place, so he didn't want to act rashly. After looking around for a moment, he realized that the spiritual energy here was quite thick, much more so than in the outside world. It was almost as thick as the spiritual energy in the valley where he had reached foundation establishment. There were no mountains or seas visible, just emptiness. There were only the 9 spell matrices and the dark green sacrificial altar. Meng Hao considered the archaic voice. My hopes rest on this dog. He looked down at the puppy, then back up and walked forward into the first matrix. The world dissolved, then reformed into a realm of immortal mountains and buildings. Everything was still and quiet. Immortal mountains stretched out like a forest in every direction, covered with various buildings, a place for immortals, not mortals. The spiritual energy was incredibly dense, about 10 times thicker than outside, forming a visible fog everywhere. Where am I? Meng Hao looked around in shock. He stretched his spiritual sense, then took a deep breath and absorbed the spiritual energy. It poured into his cultivation base and golden Dao pillar, some leaking from the crack. Such thick spiritual energy. One day here would be like a month outside. His spirits roused, he noticed the puppy looked happy, absorbing energy as its body grew. Fluffy fur appeared on its skin, making it very cute. Meng Hao pondered, this dog will grow with me. From its breathing it grows at the same speed. Could it have the same latent talent because it absorbed my heart's blood? His eyes flashed. He moved forward, the little puppy at his side, now about 2 finger lengths in size, straining to keep up. Chapter 122, Reaching an Agreement. 3 days passed. Meng Hao frowned. No matter how far he flew, this place had no end, no borders. The spiritual energy diminished with time. How do I break through? Meng Hao sat cross-legged on a mountain peak, his eyes flashing as he looked around. Meanwhile, outside the legacy zone, the cultivators surrounding the 7 altars throughout the southern domain were all watching the scene on the blood screens. They could clearly see that 7 of the blurry figures, upon entering the first matrix, immediately sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. However, the 8th and last person to enter started flying around in seemingly random directions. A long time passed before he sat down and began to meditate. What sect is that last person from? Doesn't he understand how the first matrix works? Oh, I know. He must be a rogue cultivator. He somehow accidentally opened the 8th blood immortal altar and started the tournament. The first matrix is very simple. It's a trial of latent talent. Basically, the first matrix will cause the blood divinity to grow. The cultivators must snatch up as much spiritual energy as possible. That's the key to breaking through the rest of the matrices. Conversations like this broke out among the cultivators, who discussed things in hushed tones. Within the legacy zone, Meng Hao lifted his head. Strange, the spiritual energy is divided among 8 people. Meng Hao's eyes gleamed. He took a deep breath and absorbed as much as possible. Though he didn't know how to break through, he was forming a guess. The spiritual energy disappeared quickly. 5 days passed. On the 5th day, his golden Tao pillar gleamed brightly as a second Tao pillar began forming. The puppy absorbed energy throughout these 5 days. Its body grew to the size of Meng Hao's hand. Soon all the spiritual energy vanished. A roar filled the air as the immortal mountains collapsed into a large platform. Meng Hao found himself sitting cross-legged. The 7 others opened their eyes. Their blood divinities had changed, grown larger and more intelligent. As for the blood-colored sprite, its size had not changed, but it had begun to grow tentacles, which writhed about slowly, giving it a very bizarre appearance. Meng Hao's puppy changed the least, hand-sized with fluffy fur. Frightened of the other blood divinities, it shrank against Meng Hao, trembling and rubbing its head against his leg. Its large, glistening eyes looked cute. A glowing door on the platform emitted a slight gravitational force, the exit. The 7 people stood up one by one, transformed into prismatic beams, and shot toward the second matrix. Most blood divinities were at the 7th or 8th level of chi condensation. The blood dragon, blood phoenix, and person-shaped divinity were 9th level. His puppy was only 3rd or 4th. My ignorance has put me at a disadvantage, but I'm the only one who can leave. If they leave, countless others would enter. They can't afford to leave. Meng Hao stood and stepped into the glowing door. He emerged in the mouth of the gigantic stone face in the lake of blood. His cultivation base was fully recovered, the suppressive force gone. The blood divinity didn't come out. It can only appear within the legacy zone. Meng Hao looked back at the altar and frowned, seeing the blood screen and the unfolding events inside. Outsiders can see what's happening. 7 blurry figures appeared within the second matrix, and he calmed slightly. The images on the screen did not reveal anything about where he was. Furthermore, the doorway which had led him back to the volcano was still there. His eyes shining, he flew into the air. In the space of a few breaths, he had arrived at where Chu Yuyan was concocting the pills. She sat there cross-legged, her face pale. As Meng Hao approached, she lifted her head and saw him flying through the air toward her. A complex expression filled her face. How many days until the 5th pill? Meng Hao landed softly, looking at her with cold eyes. She was silent. Finally, she replied softly, within half a month. We need not keep fighting, Meng Hao said. He looked around at the mists, now visible to him. Chu Yuyan lowered her head. I want to leave, but I don't trust you. Concoct my pill and help me understand the tournament. I swear I'll get you out safely. Cultivator oaths cannot be trusted, she replied. You have no choice but to trust me, Meng Hao said. My benevolence has a limit. First you went after my cultivation base, second you tried to trick me. If there's a third, I'll kill you. Chu Yuyan sat silently. Meng Hao sat cross-legged beside her and said nothing more. A day passed before she sighed. She was out of tricks. All her attempts to outwit Meng Hao had failed. If she wanted to escape, she had to trust him. She had experienced his ruthlessness and sensed the killing intent behind his words. The 9 matrices are all different, she began quietly. But the sects have researched them in the 7 past tournaments. Your path is seizure. Seize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It will grow your cultivation base and, matching your latent talent, facilitate your blood divinity's growth. Your blood divinity's growth is vital. The Violet Fate sect concluded that breaking through the 9th matrix allows the blood divinity to reach the power of 1 halfway to spirit severing. It becomes the weapon spirit, and its master acquires the legacy. Whoever masters the weapon spirit becomes the first since ancient times to wield the treasure's incomparable half-spirit severing power. A Tao protector, left by the blood immortal of the ancient Temple of Doom. Except the first, the 9 matrices all have different essences. The sex gathered details, determined through cooperation that each matrix changes. Over many ages, their hearts have evolved, making exact essences difficult to determine. Whoever first understands a matrix's essence begins absorbing spiritual energy first, and their blood divinity grows first. Spiritual energy is limited. The more you absorb, the less others can. Chu Yuyan looked at Meng Hao. I scanned the details back in the sect, but remember little. Some matrices are illusions. She closed her eyes. Meng Hao pondered Chu Yuyan's words. After analyzing, he shot back toward the blood immortal's sacrificial altar. The 7 others still occupied the second matrix. He strode forward into the giant mouth, and moments later he stood on the platform he'd arrived at after the first matrix. The hand-sized puppy materialized, jumping excitedly and running around him. It rested on his feet, licking his pant leg and looking up with adoring eyes. His reappearance caused little stir. Based on his first matrix setback, he was in 8th place. He took a deep breath and shot into the second matrix. From outside, it appeared as a slowly rotating whirlpool of stars. As he entered, the stars changed position. The world warped bizarrely, then clarified, revealing a vast blood-colored ocean. The limitless ocean was deep crimson. Off in the distance, the sun set. The evening wind carried a fishy stench and rippled the glowing surface. The spiritual energy was thin here, not enough to absorb. It would not become thick enough to do so until the spell matrix was broken through. The blood-colored puppy ran forward and let out threatening yips toward the ocean, nervous and fearful. Its fur stood on end. The ocean rumbled and seethed. An arching dark green wooden bridge rose slowly, dripping blood. Lightning and thunder fell. Atop the bridge stood a young boy with long hair, cold eyes glittering viciously at Meng Hao. "One attack," the boy said coldly, his old archaic voice contrasting his appearance. His eyes shone with killing intent. "If you live, the second bridge shall rise. Pass 3 bridges and break through this matrix." Chapter 123, Converging Sense into the Form. Killing intent powerful enough to stir the ocean filled the air. The bridge dripped blood as massive waves rolled across it. The boy lifted his hand into a fist and descended toward Meng Hao. The ocean roared as waves surged. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. The boy's cultivation base was late foundation establishment, but Meng Hao had to fight. He strode forward with the puppy, who let out threatening yips, blood wisps floating around its body. They turned into 2 beams of prismatic light shooting toward the boy. Meng Hao slapped his bag and 2 wooden swords flew out. He spat out the lightning flags, surrounding himself with mist. Like arrows, he and the puppy slammed into the boy. An explosion sounded. Meng Hao coughed blood as the wooden sword spun out of control. The mist dissipated. Both shook and flew backward, spraying blood. The young boy looked coolly at Meng Hao, then lifted his right hand. Behind him, the sea began to roil and a second arch bridge appeared. The young boy disappeared. On the second bridge, a young man could be seen. This young man's appearance was very familiar. He looked just like the boy from the first bridge, except 10 years older. "You can come fight any time you wish," he said, his voice cool. "If my fist doesn't kill you, then you can pass to the third bridge." With this, he closed his eyes and stood there motionless. Meng Hao wiped his mouth and sat cross-legged. The attack had late flawless foundation establishment power. Without the lightning flag, he would have perished. No wonder the 7 others haven't broken through in a day. This tournament is serious. Meng Hao's eyes filled with determination. He took a deep breath, consumed a medicinal pill, and adjusted his cultivation base. He placed one in front of the puppy, who lapped it up and settled in his lap to recover. 2 days later, Meng Hao's eyes opened. The puppy leaped up, more than half recovered. Its aura had changed, closer to Meng Hao, vicious toward others. Without the high-quality medicinal pills, it would have perished. "You're like I was," Meng Hao said softly. "Simple and ordinary, thrust into the cultivation world. You must change, grow stronger, become cold-blooded. You must learn to kill." The puppy gazed up as if understanding. It licked his robe, ran in circles, then lay at his feet. Meng Hao's eyes filled with resolve. He stood and looked toward the second bridge. He smacked his bag and a sword rain flew out. 500 flying swords circled him, forming a flying rain dragon. Power from his demonic core filled his body. The wooden swords appeared, forming the dragon's long fangs. Everything shot toward the young man. The young man waved his right hand casually. No waves or roar emerged. It seemed simplistic, but like the first boy's fist, it didn't wait. Meng Hao's flying sword smashed to pieces, colliding with an impenetrable wall. The center sword shattered. An invisible line appeared, smashing toward Meng Hao. Sensing deadly threat, he threw all his power into the lightning mist and sent the wooden swords to block. The puppy flew up, using its back as a shield. Meng Hao grabbed it and threw it aside. A boom rang out endlessly. Blood shot from Meng Hao's mouth as he tumbled backward, spinning. He landed on the first bridge, coughing blood, his face pale, as if his Dao pillar would shatter. That was more horrific than the first, yet only middle flawless foundation establishment power. And the dog protected me. He wiped his blood and looked at the worried puppy. He rubbed its head, then looked back at the young man. You passed, the young man said calmly, but given your power you won't pass the third bridge. He waved his hand and a third bridge appeared. He vanished as a middle-aged man appeared on the third bridge, the young man 10 years older. From his cultivation base, he was at early foundation establishment, one Dao pillar, like Meng Hao. A shock. Strange, Meng Hao said. Why would the third bridge have someone like this? The order should be opposite. Withstand one of my attacks without coughing blood, the man said. 3 chances, 1 fist strike each. Fail 3 times and you're disqualified, buried in the ocean, your spirit part of the altar. Meng Hao sat cross-legged and took out medicinal pills for himself and the puppy. Watching it consume them, he thought back to how it had leaped to protect him, and warmth filled his heart. After 3 days, Meng Hao recovered somewhat. The puppy opened its eyes, energetic. Staring at the man, Meng Hao's eyes filled with thought. He reviewed his battles with the young boy and young man, trying to piece together clues. Another day passed. Meng Hao raised his head. He had thought of a solution. The boy's late foundation establishment attack made the ocean seethe. The power emanated outward. The young man's middle foundation establishment attack didn't emanate outward, destroying only 20 of 500 swords, forcing direct confrontation. The cultivation bases weren't the same. The technique, not the power, is what matters. Meng Hao's eyes shone with understanding. This man's cultivation base matches mine, but what power will he use? Meng Hao stood, his eyes gleaming. He didn't care about the legacy. He had realized the 9 matrices contained invisible legacies everywhere. He didn't attack immediately. Instead, he stood on the bridge and experimented. He slowly sent power emanating from his cultivation base, attempting to control its dissipation. It was difficult, but Meng Hao was stubborn. 7 days passed. He had 30% control. I can't keep delaying. His eyes gleaming, he walked toward the man. Boom! After 10 breaths, Meng Hao tumbled backward, blood spraying as splitting pain filled his head. He landed on the second bridge, quivering, supported on one hand. The puppy quivered beside him, one leg broken, aura weak. Meng Hao looked up slowly. First try, failure. He took a deep breath and sat cross-legged, feeding medicinal pills to the puppy. Its fur was unhealthy and eyes dim, but its life force was powerful. Every recovery amplified its killing intent. That man is only at the early foundation establishment stage. However, his attack leaked almost no power whatsoever, plus it was filled with a very peculiar feeling. It seemed as if the fist was not really a fist. However, I could also tell my 7 days of work paid off. I'm on the right track. He lifted his hand and pushed down between his eyebrows, dissipating some of the pain which racked his body. He got to his feet and continued to attempt to exercise control over his power seepage from his cultivation base. 7 more days passed, and Meng Hao felt that he had about 50% control. Although his cultivation base had not grown, in terms of fighting strength, he had advanced by leaps and bounds. Meng Hao looked up, his eyes glittering brightly. He and the puppy shot forward, man and dog together, charging the figure on the bridge. Boom! Again, it took the space of 10 breaths. Meng Hao flopped backward, spinning over and over, blood showering from his mouth to stain his clothes. However, his eyes were bright. As for the puppy, it seemed to be changing as Meng Hao gained enlightenment. Its injuries were not as severe this time. It let out a fierce little howl. Spiritual sense. He's not just coalescing his cultivation base, he's adding spiritual sense into the fist attack. That makes the fist capable of striking directly to the cultivation base. Meng Hao took in a deep breath as the glow of enlightenment filled his eyes. He suddenly understood that, although the cultivation base is of critical importance to a cultivator, when it came to spiritual power and the techniques with which to employ it, control is the key to true might in battle. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. This time, he spent about 2 weeks before he opened his eyes. He had been stuck in this matrix for around a month. He had no idea how things were going for the 7 others, but as far as Meng Hao was concerned, even if he was in last place, he had acquired something incredible. He slowly stood up, flying forward. The puppy seemed to have been reborn in accord to Meng Hao's enlightenment. It followed Meng Hao, charging directly toward the man on the bridge. Boom! Meng Hao retreated backward 8 steps. He slowly lifted his head. His qi and blood roiled, but there was no trace of blood in his throat. The man pulled back his fist. Meng Hao bowed to him with clasped hands. You are enlightened regarding the concept of converging sense into the form. You have passed the second matrix. The old man nodded and flicked his sleeve. The world around began to crumble. This chapter was sponsored by Jonathan Aloof, Michelle Blanco, and William Mishack. Chapter 124, Breaking Through the Matrix. A huge wave of spiritual energy swept out, encircling him and the puppy. He breathed deeply, circulating his cultivation base and absorbing large quantities. The energy was thicker than in the first matrix. He felt he could form his second Tao pillar without medicinal pills. But some seeped through the crack. Without it, he'd condense the second Tao pillar quickly. The perfect foundation. Anticipation gleamed in his eyes. He wasn't the only excited one. The puppy began to absorb spiritual energy at a rapid rate. Its body slowly began to change. Its qi grew stronger, although some of it dissipated out, just like Meng Hao's. After only 3 days, the energy was sucked dry. Meng Hao opened his eyes, sitting cross-legged on a huge platform. 4 other figures sat in meditation on it. At almost the same time that Meng Hao opened his eyes, they did too. All of their respective blood divinities were changed in some way. Meng Hao's puppy changed most dramatically, now half an arm's length with blood-red fur, sharp teeth, and glittering claws. Its eyes glowed reddish, transformed by life and death struggles. Its qi now carried foundation establishment strength. For cultivators, foundation establishment is difficult, but for blood divinities the legacy zone was special. They could experience rapid growth. Their growth is so quick, perhaps they have special abilities or they're spirits of the dead. Meng Hao pondered. 3 indistinct figures occupied the third matrix ahead. One was in the fourth. They had left much earlier, preferring to charge ahead rather than absorb energy. Meng Hao stood. His eyes gleamed as he strode into the third matrix. Meanwhile, in the world outside of the blood immortal legacy zone, nearly 10,000 cultivators had gathered around to watch the scenes playing out on the blood screen. The sound of conversations began to rise. The news is already spreading. The identities of most of the people inside have already been discovered. Who would have imagined that the person in first place is Li Dai, Dao child of the Li clan? It's hard to say if he'll be able to acquire the legacy in the end, but he certainly seems to have the best chance. How detestable. The great clans and sects are always lording it over the legacies. They never give anyone else the slightest chance. If only I were the person who had discovered the location of the blood, immortal's 8th sacrificial altar. The very least benefit is that there wouldn't have been anyone to fight over it with. What's the use of even thinking about it? All the people who enter the matrices are chosen from various sects and clans. Even if you didn't have to fight over it compared to those chosen, you're too weak. Look, that guy is obviously the one who opened the blood immortal's 8th sacrificial altar, and yet see how much time he took in the second matrix. Based on that, there's no way he can pass through the third. Most of the discussions that filled the areas surrounding the southern domain's blood, immortal legacy zones, went something like this. Within the fourth matrix was Li Dai, looking dashing and handsome in his long, yellow robe. He peered calmly off into the distance. A desert stretched out as far as the eye could see. Long ago, the patriarch left behind a decree and a prophecy. The blood immortal would emerge from the Li clan. This legacy belongs to me. As for the others, well, their lives will be under my control within the 6th matrix. His expression calm, he stepped forward. Back in the third matrix, Meng Hao's brow furrowed slightly. Next to him, the dog let out a threatening howl as it stared at a massive tree which had appeared up ahead. Underneath the tree was a go board, upon which were a myriad of go pieces, spread out like the stars in the sky. Black was clearly in the losing position. There was one white piece sitting next to the board, as if it were waiting for someone to pick it up and play it. Surrounding the go board were several hundred trees, each one about as tall as a person. The whole place seemed deserted. The presence of the huge tree made it seem even more bizarre. The archaic voice filled the air. In the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, the character Blood emphasizes killing. If you desire to acquire the legacy but have insufficient killing intent, then it will be very difficult for you. This matrix emphasizes killing. However, the one who kills must have a cold heart and a calm spirit. Place the white go piece onto the board and you will win this game of death. You have one chance. If you wish to forfeit, you must sacrifice 100 years of longevity and lose your chance at acquiring the legacy. The instant the voice finished speaking, one of the trees up ahead suddenly exploded into pieces. From within emerged a phantom emanating the chi of Foundation Establishment, the same as Meng Hao's cultivation base. The phantom was blurry, except for a pair of blood-red eyes which emanated a fierce killing aura. It immediately raced toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao's eyes glittered sharply. Next to him, the puppy let out sharp yapping sounds as it charged forward with him. A booming sounded out. A moment later, Meng Hao watched as the Foundation Establishment phantom dispersed into strands of spiritual energy, which then shot toward Meng Hao. As this happened, popping sounds rang out as 3 more trees began to split apart. After enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, blood seeped out of the corners of Meng Hao's mouth. The puppy was injured and bleeding, although its appearance was as fierce as ever as it looked around. 5 Foundation Establishment phantoms had appeared. More time passed. It was hard to tell exactly how long. Meng Hao coughed up some more blood. He had fought his way through the trees to a position not quite 6,000 meters away from the go board and the large tree. His eyes were bloodshot as he raced through the world of the third matrix. He was currently surrounded by 12 Foundation Establishment phantoms, each of whom emitted killing intent which billowed into the sky. The puppy yipped next to him, and then a blood-colored beam flashed. Its sharp teeth crunched into the neck of one of the Foundation Establishment phantoms. Together, the two of them had slaughtered their way forward, at the same time trying to absorb as much spiritual energy as possible from this place. By now, the puppy had already reached the middle Foundation Establishment stage and was continuing to grow. Its fierceness was now even more apparent. Several hours later, Meng Hao staggered along, coughing up some blood. Up ahead, a Foundation Establishment phantom was on its last legs, panting. It seemed to use all the power it could possibly muster to dash forward. As it did, Meng Hao's killing intent flared. His right hand formed into a fist and, ignoring the incoming sword aura, punched his fist toward the phantom's chest. His fist suddenly opened, and a wind blade shot out with a boom. Meng Hao coughed up more blood. At the same time, the Foundation Establishment phantom trembled and then exploded. Not too far away, the puppy was an unstoppable blood-red glow. It used its sharp claws and teeth to rip the Foundation Establishment phantoms to shreds. Then, it rapidly absorbed their spiritual energy and returned to Meng Hao's side. Its body was covered with wounds which oozed blood. Its chi was weak, but its ferocity was as strong as ever. It seemed to have been baptized in blood. Meng Hao swallowed some medicinal pills and then tossed some down to the puppy. His clothes were torn and ripped, but his eyes gleamed. Lifting his head, he saw that the distance between himself and the tree was now less than 6,000 meters. It was at this time that a roaring sound filled the air. 20 Foundation Establishment phantoms appeared, racing at full speed toward Meng Hao. He took in a deep breath, fatigue covering his face, but his eyes flashing. He lifted his hand, and the lightning mist appeared. Electricity surrounded him as he charged forward to battle the phantoms. Wounds led to wounds, battles led to battles. 4 hours passed. Meng Hao's face was white. He was now 2,500 meters from the large tree. He raced backward with the puppy, away from the Foundation Establishment phantoms. One by one, they stopped, transforming back into trees. Some distance away from them, Meng Hao sat down cross-legged and ate some medicinal pills to heal his wounds. Next to him, the puppy consumed quite a few as well, and began to recover quickly. 4 days passed before Meng Hao suddenly opened his eyes. The puppy looked even more ferocious as the two of them once again charged into battle. This time they fought to within 1,500 meters of the tree, until they could proceed no further, whereupon they fell back. In the following days, Meng Hao and the puppy continued to fight and rest. Meng Hao's eyes grew more and more ruthless, his attacks more and more decisive. At this point, he had roughly 70% control over his cultivation base. Furthermore, regardless of which technique he used, he imbued it with spiritual sense. As for the puppy, its body was now as long as an arm. It appeared even more ferocious. Its claws were fully grown out, as had its sharp teeth. It appeared as if it could rip anything to shreds. Its eyes glowed bright red, making it look even more savage. 1,500 meters, 900 meters, 300 meters. Meng Hao had been stuck in this matrix for more than a month. Soon, he reached a position 60 meters away from the large tree. The puppy let loose a howl and latched onto the corner of Meng Hao's robe with its teeth, dragging him forward. Meng Hao didn't mind at all. He let the puppy drag him, and the two of them shot forward, blasting through the defending Foundation establishment phantoms, passing over the 60-meter mark. As they approached the tree, the puppy loosened its mouth, then spun and charged back into the Foundation establishment phantoms. Meng Hao didn't hesitate. He snatched up the white Go piece. His gaze swept across the Go board, and then he placed the piece down. As soon as it touched the board, this entire world grew quiet. Everything in front of Meng Hao looked like a mirror that was shattering. Boundless spiritual energy surged into him. He knew that he had passed through the third matrix. When this happened, the cultivators outside of the 7 blood immortal legacy zones around the southern domain flew into an uproar. The Li clan Dao child Li Dai broke through the fourth matrix. It took him a month. That's Wang Wud of the Blood Demon sect. He's right behind Li Dai. He was the second to enter the fourth matrix. Everyone else is stuck in the third matrix. I wonder who will be the third person to. It's got to be Wang Lihai. After all, he's a Dao child. The Wang clan really isn't holding anything back. They sent a Dao child. 3 people just came out at the same time. That's Wang Lihai and Songjia, and that other person is. Wow, it's him.